This is a true story, and I hope many of you can relate. My story revolves around a lifetime of love, betrayal, redemption, and finally, acceptance and respect. I also hope that everything I've learned during my life will be useful and interesting to others in similar situations. I was born in 1951. I am now 73 years old, and my childhood was terribly unhappy and painful. Unfortunately, I never knew either my mother or father. Apparently, my mother had severe substance abuse issues, and my father had no background or history. There was no extra family, and the state took me into custody when I was less than a year old. According to my little history, I was left alone in a filthy, trash-filled flat. The landlord had heard me screaming for nearly 24 hours and alerted the local authorities who came to get me. Nobody ever came searching for me. To this day, I am unsure why I was not adopted. There was always a demand for babies for adoption. The issue appeared to be that the state continued to look for my family, but no one could be found. We discuss about slipping between the gaps and becoming lost in the system. I suppose that is exactly what occurred to me. I was moved from foster family to foster home and then to an orphanage. Every time it seemed like a family would take me in. The state intervened and sent me to a different home or facility. I lacked stability and security, and I never knew where I'd wind up. At a specific stage in my life, I was considered too old for adoption and ended up living in a Catholic charities-run orphanage in a northwestern suburb of Chicago. Anyone who lives in the Chicago region is familiar with this establishment, which has been in operation for more than a century. Now, don't get me wrong. I was never abused or neglected, and I was well cared for. The difficulty, of course, is that living in an institution without a genuine family causes feelings of loss, disconnection, and forgetfulness. Mealtimes were always exciting to me. I never went hungry, but I also never felt satisfied. Institutional meals are not the pinnacle of culinary brilliance, and one can only consume overdone meatloaf so many times. Breakfast was always composed of cream, of wheat cereal, and toast. As previously said, I was never hungry, but I was also never satisfied. I now refuse to eat meatloaf or cream of wheat. Being a ward of the state and living in this type of atmosphere may require me to stand up for myself and not be scared to use my fist. I mentioned before that I was not abused, but that doesn't mean I didn't have to struggle to protect myself and my belongings from other children. Being able to defend myself became a strength for me throughout my life. I mean more than just being able to fight. Having the mental toughness to deal with such a circumstance over a long period of time provided me with a form of mental toughness that most young people lack. I didn't know my parents, but they must have been tall. It was fortunate for me that I was not vertically challenged, since I was almost always one of the tallest and biggest kids my age. I never had bullying tendencies and never used my size to threaten other children, whether at school or in the orphanage. I would be lying if I didn't confess that strength and size can be a significant advantage. While living in an orphanage, I heard horrific stories from some of the younger children I stayed with who had to deal with bullying issues that I did not have to. As previously said, my upbringing was unhappy, desolate, and for the most part, loveless. In fact, I don't recall ever being kissed or embraced until I was in my adolescent years. The children from the orphanage attended local schools. I always thought we were looked down on by the teachers and the other students in town. Teachers constantly spoke slowly and loudly to me, as if I lacked the intellectual capacity to study and devote myself at school. My grades were satisfactory, but I must admit that I wasn't disinterested. Student. I blamed myself for my low academic achievement, but there was no doubt in my mind that my teachers placed me in the second tier, paid little attention to me, and effectively dismissed me. I had some success in athletics, particularly in football and wrestling. I had decent size, strength, and quickness. I started playing football and wrestling when I was around 10 years old. It is crucial for me to mention that, while the professors were uninterested in me, my young coaches were the opposite, and I know it wasn't just because of my stature and athleticism. There were other orphanage kids that participated, and for some reason, my youth sports coaches were committed to working with all of us. One of my athletic coaches took me aside one day and asked what was wrong. Since he could tell I was distraught and had tears in my eyes, I told him that today was my 12th birthday and no one cared. To my surprise, later that night, the coach arrived at the facility with his wife, cake, ice cream, and a gift. That day, I realized that there is some empathy, kindness, and love in the world. It may appear to be a little anecdote, but that day taught me that some individuals genuinely care about the well-being of others. My coach and his wife continued to monitor me and ensure my well-being. Many years later, I found that he and his wife had expressed interest in adopting me or becoming my foster parents. I'm not sure why the request was denied, but my initial reaction was that it was due to government bureaucracy and simply being lost in the system. Having said that, I did see them on their birthdays and over holidays. I was occasionally able to stop by their house for dinner with their family. This was usually a pleasant event for me, but it was also somewhat bittersweet because I saw the type of family life I wished for but never had the opportunity to have. This relationship lasted until I was about 15. My old coach obtained a promotion with his work, which caused him to relocate to another state. We finally lost contact, but I'm grateful for everything he and his family did for me. As I grew into a teenager, I continued to attend school, play sports, and strive to live the greatest life possible. When I was 15, I started my first work at a neighborhood restaurant, cleaning dishes at night. The orphanage leadership helped me get a job. After examining the restaurant and obtaining my work authorization, my first check was $8. With this money, I was eager to purchase a pair of jeans that truly fit me. The state furnished me with clothing, and donations to the institution were non-existent, so I wore whatever was provided to me. For example, I almost always had to roll my sleeves up because the shirts were too short. Throughout high school, I continued to play football and wrestle. I was more than capable of holding my own and excelled in sports. I wasn't exceptional, but I played consistently and contributed to the squad. We won more than we lost, which was a pleasant experience for me. During this time, I continued to work at the restaurant. I took phone orders, helped cook the meals, cleaned up, and occasionally worked the tables. I also received my driver's license after one of the proprietors taught me how to drive. I learned by operating a restaurant delivery van. The owners did it because they liked me. I was always on time, worked hard, and was confident that I was not a thief. When they needed to leave early for an occasion, they would have me close the restaurant and lock it up. Once I acquired my driver's license, I began making deliveries using the restaurant's delivery van. This worked out well because the other delivery personnel had their own automobiles. I couldn't afford to buy a car and wouldn't have had anywhere to park it either. The delivery van worked well for me, and the owners occasionally allowed me use it for personal reasons. The restaurant proprietors treated me well. Ironically, the individuals I worked with at the restaurant were perhaps the closest thing to family I'd ever had. Friendships were difficult to form and sustain at the orphanage because most residents came and went on a regular basis. I spent 9 years at the orphanage. I still believe I am one of the longest residents they have ever had. Several people had the dubious privilege of being there longer, but I am definitely on the list for total years spent at the facility. I performed all right, but I still felt like I was entirely alone. I would have liked to be a member of a family, but I never got the opportunity. This still haunts me because I've always considered myself an outcast and oddball. When I was 16, I met a young girl who had just gotten her first job at the restaurant. Her name was Paula, and she hailed from a huge Italian-American family living in town. Her father was a truck driver, and her mother, like many women at the time, stayed at home to care for her family. What a family it was. There were 10 children in the household, 5 girls and 5 boys. Everyone knew the family, since one of the children was in almost every grade at school. The daughters, all of them, were stunning. They were shorter, but had jet black, stunning hair, incredible eyes, and sensuous proportions. Without a question, they were exceptionally stunning females who drew the attention of nearly every young suitor in the neighborhood. The problem, of course, was that if you wanted to catch one of these beauties, you had to deal with the brothers. Each brother was large and strong, with little care for protecting their sisters. All of the boys in the area knew that if they wanted to date one of the girls, they would have to battle at least one of the brothers. Paula and I worked together and got to know one another. I freely admit that I liked her and fantasized about our future together. It is vital to understand that this was purely a fantasy. Even though Paula had no idea how I felt about her, I continued to fantasize about her in a variety of ways, virtually always including what I referred to as the biblical one. In my perspective, we'd have a fantastic relationship and could start a family and live together. One day, I was bringing a bucket and mop to clean the floor, after the restaurant closed. Paula walked past me in a really sassy and enticing manner. Her hips swayed, her attributes bouncing, and she stood proudly and firmly. I was focused solely on her, so I tripped, fell, and spilled the entire pail of water. The end result was that everyone in the restaurant laughed at me, after they checked to ensure that I was not injured. Embarrassment best defines my reaction, and my face was probably redder than the tablecloths in the dining room. When Paula inquired what occurred, I made some half-baked answer about being distracted and not paying attention. She smirked at me and asked, "What did you find so distracting?" She was aware of what had occurred and commented that if I focused more on my work rather than her, I might not risk breaking my neck every night. I believe Paula was attempting to lure me to make a move on her, but I was what most of you would consider a romantic novice. I had no notion how to make a move. I was continuously thinking about new approaches, which resulted in intense enthusiasm, but I never took action. Therefore, these passionate times never materialized. Luck and fate, however, were on my side in at least one case. Paula and I were working at the restaurant one night when we were allocated all the way till closing, which was fantastic for me. One of her brothers was going to pick her up but had a car trouble. He contacted the restaurant and asked if she might have a ride home. One of the owners called me over and informed me that after we finished, I would have to drive Paula home in the restaurant van. I would then return the van to the restaurant and drop the keys in the mailbox before walking back to the orphanage. When I told Paula that I would drive her home in the van, she responded with a sultry and cheeky smile and nod, without getting into too much depth. It was evident that one part of my body was more than eager to take Paula home and prepare for whatever activities could arise. Paula and I were in the van headed home when she asked, "So why haven't you asked me out after hearing this?" I nearly ran a red light, had to slam the brakes, and came to a sudden stop. Remember, this was in the 1960s and no one wore seatbelts. In fact, I do not believe the delivery included seatbelts. Paula flew out of the passenger seat and landed on my lap. We peered into each other's eyes, and happily, Paula had become bored of my amorous ineptness. She then stretched for me, kissing me passionately. We pulled into the parking lot of the local grocery shop and started kissing. My amorous pursuits were cut short, however, when local law officers drove through the lot to investigate why there was a solitary van parked at the end of the parking lot. After a brief discussion, I was told to leave the parking lot and take Paula home. I believe the 2 police officers in the car are still smiling today after busting us and sending us on our way. Paula and I's relationship progressed swiftly following that night. We were together all the time, and I can honestly say that I was madly in love with her. Things got awkward at times because I didn't have a car and couldn't take her out on a regular date. Her parents were also friendly to me, although it was evident they were concerned about my position. They weren't openly antagonistic to me, but it was evident that they thought my future was bleak at best. Her brothers were fine with me, but they warned me that if I got out of line or abused their sister, I would be beaten to a pulp. Many Reddit stories often include descriptions of passionate and romantic bedroom activities. I'm sorry to say that this was not the case with Paula. First, we didn't have anywhere to go. Second, I was concerned about her family's reaction if they discovered me attempting to deflower their daughter-sister. Third, I couldn't even call her since I couldn't get to a phone without walking approximately a half mile to the nearest phone booth. Fourth, I didn't even own a car, so a backseat conquest wasn't an option. Finally, I'm embarrassed to admit that I had no notion what to do or how to keep us safe from pregnancy. Paula was a very educated girl who made it clear to me that we would never have an amorous encounter unless there was a beautiful, secluded place to take her, and I had adequate protection. In April 1969, I had just turned 18 and was informed that I would have to leave the orphanage. After graduating from high school in June, I had no idea what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. My prospects were bleak at best, and I must admit that I was afraid of the future. The facility administrators assured me that I would not be tossed out on the street with nowhere to go, but that I should start planning for the future. The prom was coming, and it was held in May 1969. Paula and I were going to the prom, and this would be my first formal dance. One of the restaurant owners pulled me aside and gave me $20 to rent a tuxedo. This was a large sum of money at the time, and I sincerely appreciated his kindness. Even better, he allowed me to borrow his Chevy Impala for the dance. His car was immaculate, and I was looking forward to driving Paula to the dance a week before the prom. Paula led me to the side and informed me that after the dance, we would attend a party at a large mansion. She glanced at me and suggested that I get some protection before we took our relationship to the next level. Let me admit that I almost dashed to the neighborhood pharmacy to stock up on protection. Today's times are not like 1969. Condoms were kept behind the counter and could only be obtained by special request. I'll never forget when I went to the counter to make my transaction. The pharmacy owner glanced at me and asked what size I needed. I was in astonishment and began to mumble something I didn't know. He smiled and told me it was only a joke because condoms only came in one size. Before you make any comments, keep in mind that this was 1969. I don't think the concept of magnums had really begun at this point. He then massaged my back, sold me many packages of protection, and said it with a chuckle, "Have fun and don't do anything I wouldn't do." The prom was magical, and the evening was even better. Let me remark that my first experience was reminiscent of a 1980s teen sexcapades film. The house was big, and there was a lovely guest cottage in the backyard. We picked a room in the cottage and locked the door to ensure our privacy. I couldn't really figure out what to do. My first performance was almost certainly an exercise in futility. We were about a minute into our first experience when Paula asked, "So you're done already? Is this what is expected to happen after the first time?" I was more than prepared for the second round, and the remainder of the night went much better, to both of our mutual delight. I brought Paula home around 2 a.m. I told her I loved her. Paula informed me she had a tremendous love for me as well, and we should discuss the future together. Paula informed me that she was not a virgin but had little experience. To summarize, I dropped off the automobile, returned to the orphanage facility, and for the first time in my life, I felt optimistic about the future. I graduated from high school in June 1969, and the orphanage personnel informed me that I needed to leave by the end of June. The senior orphanage administrator pulled me aside and handed me $100 to get started after I departed. That was a lot of money at the time, and I greatly appreciated it. The school administration also assisted me in obtaining a job at a local factory, paying $2 per hour, as well as an apartment above a town garage. If you've ever watched Happy Days and seen Fonzie's flat over the Cunningham's garage, you'll know what my living style was. However, the apartment was tidy and had a bathroom, so I had no problems. I also purchased a 1963 Buick Wildcat. That car was amazing, and I got a wonderful bargain on it. Since the old owner had died, the family wished to get rid of it. I still wish I had that automobile. That automobile was a beast, and I really liked driving it. The elderly people who owned the house with the garage apartment were quite lovely. The wife informed me that no ladies were allowed in the flat under any circumstances. When she told me this, the husband nodded in agreement, but later, he pulled me to the side with a knowing nod and grin. He assured me that what his wife didn't know wouldn't harm her. But if I sneak a girl in, we have to be quiet, and she can't be underage. I told him there would be no problems, and there were none, including my car and apartment. I also engaged in a variety of protective measures to guarantee that I could advance my physical relationship with Paula, which we accomplished. In fact, we advanced our connection whenever and anywhere we could. Paula initially informed me she was not interested in backseat romance, but this was not the case. The Buick Wildcat has a huge, roomy back seat. Paula had no reservations about using the back seat to the fullest extent imaginable. It was July 1969, and I had nothing to complain about in my life. I had a job, an apartment, a car, and a pretty agreeable girlfriend. I continued to work at the restaurant part-time. The money from this part-time work was put into a savings account. My goal was to accumulate enough money to propose to Paula and purchase an engagement ring. I adored Paula and hoped to establish a life with her and start a family. The only negative issue was with her family. They liked me but didn't regard me as having a bright future. They believed Paula should be linked with a man who had far bigger chances. It was a different time, so the family expected Paula to marry and have children. As previously stated, her family did not despise me. but rather believed that Paula could do far better than me. In retrospect, they were probably correct. But I always believed that I was up for the challenge of proving them wrong. I just never got the chance. Paula and I discussed our future. She told me she loved me but didn't seem to be as committed to me as she once was. She frequently became unavailable. Many times in the evenings, she informed me that she was spending more time with her family and friends. She intended to attend a local junior college before finally enrolling in a state school to become a teacher. She continued to tell me how much she loved me, but I could sense our passion and dedication had changed. One day at the plant, one of my co-workers informed me that he had seen Paula with another man at a nearby restaurant. This guy knew Paula from the region and was startled to see her with this person. He explained that he didn't want to harm my feelings. However, based on their personal encounters, he concluded that they were romantically involved. He wanted me to know because he valued honesty. I wouldn't say we were buddies because he was much older than me, but we worked together in a friendly manner. That night, I was in my car waiting to see where Paula was going. I took the night off from my part-time restaurant work, but she wasn't aware. She left the house around 7 p.m. and walked several blocks. A man with a really good automobile brought her up. She climbed in and they drove off. I stayed far enough back to avoid being identified, but I did follow their automobile to a nearby restaurant. They remained in the restaurant for around 90 minutes before exiting. I was completely surprised when they went to a local motel at this point in my life. I couldn't afford a hotel and had never considered taking Paula to one. The manner they strolled in together indicated that they were there for only one reason. I was completely devastated. All of my thoughts and goals were instantly shattered, and I felt like a complete misfit, an outsider. When you read this narrative again, keep in mind what was going on at the time. The Vietnam War was literally at its climax. The United States had thousands of troops in the nation and was actively engaged in combat operations against Viet Cong irregulars and North Vietnamese regular soldiers. The Tet Offensive occurred in 1968, and the United States was nearly torn apart by violent protests. As you read this story, you'll understand why this is a critical factor. It was clear to me that my relationship with Paula had ended. I returned home that night, sat in my apartment, and regretted the future. After a long day, have a pizza. After I arrived home, the house's owner paid me a visit. He informed me that an official from the orphanage facility had stopped by the residence earlier that day to drop off an envelope. I had received a letter at the orphanage. He handed me the letter with a troubled expression on his face, and I knew immediately what it was. I got a draft notice. My lottery draft number was low, so I was not expecting that I would be drafted. I did not have any money or resources. There was no way I could afford college and receive a deferment. I knew it was only a matter of time until I received my notice. My initial reaction was, so what? Because no one cares about me regardless. I was a nobody, and my death in Vietnam would not raise any concerns. My experience with my ended relationship earlier that night demonstrated that I had no future and that my death would be meaningless. The letter mentioned a report day for processing and a physical. The letter had been at the orphanage for quite some time before I received it, and I noticed that my physical was set for early the following week. The following day, I went to work and gave my employer the notification letter. He was a World War II veteran who knew exactly what I was up against. He knew I'd be inducted and probably certainly deployed to Vietnam. He shook my hand, assured me that I would be paid for the remainder of the week, and wished me luck. I knew I'd need luck because of where I was heading. It's noteworthy to note that I had no touch with Paula during this time. I'm not sure if she knew I was aware of the other person, but we didn't see each other or communicate. One night, I noticed her and the man in issue walking into a nearby theater holding hands. I had a good look at him. Not to brag, but I was considerably more attractive and in much better shape. He also appeared to be 10 years older than me, so I assumed he had far greater life prospects than I did. I did not approach them, and I don't think she noticed me. My reaction was, who cares? And I resolved that if she wanted him, she could have him. I'm not claiming this situation didn't have an affect on me. I was saddened and upset about it, but I had faced a lot of struggle in my life and refused to let this bring me down. My induction day was intriguing. I passed my physical and was instructed to report within the following 30 days to ship out for basic training. I explained my predicament to the draft administrators and asked if I might ship out earlier. There was nothing going on in my life, so I figured the sooner the better. To my relief, I was advised to return back in 72 hours and ship out by the end of the week. I'd already quit my job and informed the restaurant proprietors that I was leaving the region. I informed them that I had been drafted and requested that they not release this information. The owners, all veterans, wished me luck. That night, I returned to my flat and felt really pathetic. I packed my personal items, which took up less than half of the luggage. My high school diploma and a birth certificate with an unknown father were the only valuable personal papers I had. When I left the flat, it was as if I had never existed. Time was of the essence, so I delivered my automobile to my landlord for sale. Because I would be departing with little notice and he would be out of rent money, he informed me that this was unnecessary. But I insisted because I didn't have time to sell the car anyhow. Being out a few $100 was not a big problem for me, and I wanted to be fair to my landlord. He agreed to transport me to the induction center on my ship's departure date and wished me the best. We had a chat about Paula. I doubted Paula or anybody else would look for me, but she might. I asked that he not tell her anything about what happened to me. I meant to entirely disappear and not communicate with anyone in the region. I went through basic training and had a profound experience. I know it seems crazy, but I thoroughly loved basic training for the first time in my life. I experienced a sense of belonging and family. Basic training is really demanding, but I was able to rally around some fantastic guys. In my view, they became brothers. One of the reasons is that many of the boys I went to basic camp with were from low-income households. They couldn't afford to attend college and receive deferments, so they were the first drafted. Many years later, I heard a phrase from Shakespeare's St. Crispin's Day address, which was eventually immortalized in Band of Brothers. This speech perfectly captured my feelings for the troops I served with throughout my time in the Army, from this day until the end of the world. But we in it will be remembered. We are few, but we are pleased. We're a band of brothers. For now, he sheds his blood. My brother will accompany me. The only unpleasant aspect of basic training for me was that I never received any mail, with the exception of some Army publications. My training teacher once scolded at me in front of the entire battalion, asking why no one ever wrote me. He cried, "Is that because I'm a weirdo, a complete loser, and nobody in the entire world cares about me?" I responded as directed, stating that I was an orphan, reared as a state ward, grew up in an orphanage, had no family, and that I was a misfit whom no one cared for. His eyes widened with amazement. But then he cried again, "This is a good thing." Then, since the Army would be my family, Uncle Sam owned my tuxedo. I discovered a home and I'd grow to love it. He left an impression on me that day, and I will never forget it. I completed basic training before moving on to Tigerland in Fort Polk, Louisiana for extra training. This was part of the advanced infantry training. This was the final step in preparing U.S. forces for jungle warfare in Vietnam. There was no doubt that I was headed to Vietnam, but I was not too concerned. I still considered myself a misfit who no one would miss if I didn't return from Vietnam. One thing surprised me while I was at Fort Polk. I received a letter from my former landlord. I'm not sure how he obtained my address, but he did and sent me a letter. I was astonished because I had never gotten a letter before. I made sure I was alone before opening it. He wrote the typical banter about the weather in town, success of the local high school sports teams, etc., but then he told me how Paula stopped by the apartment one night to visit me. It was about 2 weeks after I shipped away, and I hadn't seen Paula in around 2 weeks previously. She hadn't seen me or attempted to see me in over a month. Paula was pounding on the apartment door when he came out and inquired what she wanted. She informed him that she was my girlfriend and was looking for me. He responded by stating that he realized we had split up because she was dating another guy. He also mentioned that I had observed them go inside a hotel together and then hold hands at a local theater. He admitted that he got malicious pleasure in telling her this and watching her lips drop. He then told her that I had left. He had no further information and didn't expect to hear from me again. She was furious and told him that she never expected our relationship to end this way. He offered her a ride home, but she rejected. She begged that if he had heard from me, please contact her. He assured her that it was unlikely that I would ever contact him. He did write to me, asking if I could provide her my contact information. I wrote back to thank him for his time. I wished him the best, but requested him not to tell Paula anything about me. I wanted to forget that period of my life and move on. I arrived in Vietnam in 1969 and was assigned to the United States 1st Air Cavalry Division. During my time in Vietnam, I was involved in a number of deadly firefights, ambushes, and engagements. I believe I performed admirably, as evidenced by the Bronze Star and Purple Heart I received for combat wounds. In April 1970, I participated in the Cambodian incursion, as well as several other engagements. After my trip, I was appointed squad leader. It's actually rather shocking when you think that I was 19 years old and was responsible for the lives of up to 12 men at once. I'll never forget my time in Vietnam, or the soldiers I served with. Several of them were killed or injured. Their service and dedication should not be forgotten. I'm still doing well in the Army, and I've already decided to stay and aim to serve 20 years before retiring. After my tour, I briefly returned to the United States before being posted to Okinawa. This abroad assignment was appreciated given how I was handled upon returning from Vietnam to the United States. Nobody ever spat in my face, but I was treated hostilely by many individuals in my home country. Okinawa was also unique in terms of the way the natives handled us. The working girls and local business owners adored us, of course, but the rest of the people was nice and respectful, although a little standoffish. Unfortunately, the U.S. military had a reputation for being impolite and generating difficulties after excessive drinking. I should clarify that generating problems was not my intention, although I do enjoy having a few cold ones. That being said, I must acknowledge that I frequented several of Okinawa's flesh pots. I had no problem spending money on booze, ladies, and music. One night, I encountered a dancer named Yoko, and she struck me as a great beauty. The first thing I noticed about her was that she was exceptionally well endowed, which was unlike most of the ladies I had seen in Okinawa. I'm stereotyping, but the majority of Asian ladies I met had soft, sweet, and innocent-looking looks. Yoko was incredibly pretty, but she had what I called a harsh and sharp expression. I thought she was gorgeous, and there was something about her roughness that intrigued me. When she danced, everyone looked at her. She had an attractive physique and appeared to know how to use her body. I talked to her during a break. I bought her a drink and we seemed to get along well. She had no pretenses and told me that for a certain fee she would entertain me for the night once she finished work. I was thinking with a specific area of my body at the time and quickly consented. We then had to negotiate her cost because I wanted her with me all night and she seemed content with the deal. Let me just say that the night was wonderful. She may have been acting, but I guarantee you that I was not. I couldn't get enough of her and didn't want the night to finish. The next morning she said farewell and went home to care for her young daughter. She spoke good English and informed me she was aware that others looked down on her because of what she did to support herself and her children. Her daughter was of mixed Asian and Caucasian descent. As a result, she was looked down upon by the residents of town. She didn't care since she told me her daughter came first and she'd do whatever she needed to do. She had given birth to her daughter when she was 15 years old and was essentially sold into slavery by her family when she was 12. This caused a lump in my throat because I admired her dedication to her baby and her survival mindset. I could identify to what she was saying me, which heightened my affections for her. I immediately scheduled a second date with her for another night, and it was great. Also, some Reddit commentators may call me a chump, and perhaps I was. However, I fell in love with Yoko on the first night, and the second was much better. The morning after the second night, I asked her to marry me, and she stared at me incredulously. I emphasized my love for her and promised to provide her and her daughter a happy life. She then consented to marry me after only knowing me for about 2 days. We were the same age, but I believe her life had been more difficult than mine. She accepted my proposal without question since she wanted to escape her life and provide a future for her children. I accepted it and promised to earn her love and respect. I promised her that we were going to have a good life together. We did. After completing countless army forms and overcoming bureaucracy, I was able to marry Yoko and subsequently adopt her daughter. Her daughter was a total darling named Sakura, which means cherry blossom. Prior to my arrival, Yoko and Sakura had no family, and we have since become a close family. Through hard effort, devotion, patience, and commitment, I gained Yoko's respect and subsequently her affection. Yoko was totally committed to me and her daughter. I believe that because of her past, she was very protective of her family and enjoyed being a wife and mother. One thing that went particularly well was our time between the sheets. Yoko had no reservations with excellent loving. She made it obvious that as her husband, I would be responsible for her contentment. I had no trouble with this, yet we had several hot and humid nights. These amorous antics produced 4 additional daughters over the next 6 years, and I couldn't have been happier. My family was doing well, and my Army career was doing well too. I had been promoted multiple times and was now at the position of E6. I wouldn't get rich, but the Army provided for my family, and we had no regrets. We were also stationed in West Germany, and I was promoted to E7 and E8. Having an assignment in Europe was great because it allowed us to see and experience things that many people never get to do. I also completed my schooling after years of part-time study, earning a bachelor's degree. My wife, Yoko, was doing well, but she wanted to stay at home, be a housewife, and care for our family. Her passions were exercise, cycling, pottery, art, and gardening. This is ironic given what she did previously, but I have no complaints. I still had to laugh, though. She had a strong desire for our nightly amorous acts, which had not waned over the years. In fact, she was probably much more eager. I was delighted to oblige, and our personal relationship was excellent. She appreciated the fact that I maintained myself in terrific shape and was always ready to participate in what I called the nightly dance. My daughters were all incredibly gorgeous. They were clever, athletic, forward-thinking, and well-positioned for success in life. I was outnumbered at home by my wife and 5 girls. Things couldn't have gone better for me, and I was overjoyed to finally have the family I had always wanted. My career had progressed well. I had also participated in the invasions of Grenada and Panama, among other arduous operations, and I can say that I earned my money while serving my nation. In 1989, I was promoted to E9 as a sergeant major, and I assumed my Army career was over. Yoko and I discussed our future plans, and we decided to retire to California and run a small bed and breakfast with a restaurant. We had also been stationed in Northern California and enjoyed the state. The restaurant would also feature a small bar with a focus on wines from Northern California. It was our ideal, and we were confident that by working together, we could make it a reality. For the most portion of the year, our daughters were either on their own or attending college. Our youngest daughter was about 15 years old, intelligent and self-sufficient. Except for our youngest daughter, Yoko and I were essentially empty nesters, and everything was going great. However, circumstances beyond our control would cause things to change. When Iraq invaded Kuwait in August 1990, I realized right away that I would have to put myself in danger again. I was in the Middle East during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. In April 1991, I returned from what I believed to be my final deployment and submitted paperwork to retire from the Army in 1995 after 26 years of service. Yoko and I were prepared to move on to the next stage of our life. I had only been retired from the Army for approximately 6 months when my life went apart. Yoko left for the grocery shop on a Friday night and told me she will be back shortly. I became concerned an hour later when she did not return. Please keep in mind that this was in 1995, and we didn't have mobile phones at the time, so I had no method of contacting her. A little while later, there was a knock on my door, and the local police were present. I later discovered that my wife had died in a car accident when she was rear-ended by a truck at a red light. I didn't think it was possible to suffer such pain and devastation in one night. If it hadn't been for my daughters and grandchildren, I would have followed her into the next world without hesitation. To make matters worse, all of my girls came at our house within 2 days of one another. Yoko and I had recently purchased a home in Northern California, and we still had boxes to unload. I had no idea what to do, and could only sit there and stare dejectedly into a cup of soup. One of my daughters had placed something in front of me. It was a difficult week as we prepared for the funeral and burial. During the service, I mentally said farewell to my wife, Yoko, but I also knew we'd see each other again someday. My daughters and grandchildren gave me strength. I chose not to abandon our idea of a small bed and breakfast with a restaurant. Not only would I open that restaurant, but it would also have a small bar with a focus on wines from Northern California. It was our dream, and I knew I would keep working on it until it became a reality. So that's what I did. Yoko and I had already purchased the land and house. The house was old, huge, and in disrepair. We intended to convert it from an old, dilapidated house into a bed and breakfast that was open for business. I finished all of the improvements on the house and prepared to open the bed and breakfast. When finished, it had 6 bedrooms, private baths, lovely grounds, and was extremely big and comfortable. My daughters assisted me in decorating it, making paint and furniture selections. I completed the work with the assistance of 2 of my sons-in-law, and I was extremely proud of our efforts. The restaurant project went nicely. In addition, I completed all of the renovations in a large barn that had previously existed on the property. Obtaining work permits and city permissions was a nightmare of a task, but we eventually completed the facility. We also have a huge area that could accommodate events such as wedding receptions for up to 180 guests. Sakura, my daughter, oversaw the restaurant after becoming a chef and aspired to create her own establishment. Her cuisine were a mix of Asian, Californian, and chic, and business thrived. Our banquet business also did quite well because there was minimal competition in the area. We were well known for our food and service, but my life was about to take a new turn as we fast forward to 2022. My youngest daughter opted to purchase a take-home DNA testing kit. She submitted the samples, and I didn't think much of it. Do not ask me how this works, but it appears that other individuals can view the results online and select to contact persons who have similar DNA. One night, my kid came running inside the home. Her face was beaming with delight. She declared that I had 2 brothers, a sister, and a large extended family in the Chicago suburbs. I'm not sure how she discovered about these links, but it appears that we had the same mother but separate fathers. I called around and discovered that we had all been state wards. The good news is that they were eventually adopted and had a happy and secure upbringing. They have little recollection of life before adoption. My brothers and sister were aware of my existence, but they didn't know my first or last name or where I resided. Nobody knew anything about my biological father, but my mother had supposedly died at a young age from either suicide or a drug overdose. My older half-siblings had already been removed by the state and placed in foster care at the time she died. I was removed following my mother's death. Nobody knew anything about my grandparents. My mother had allegedly initially arrived from Iowa, but there was no information on that either. My siblings were unable to obtain any information from the state regarding me. I had truly gone through the cracks because my records could not be located. It would be an understatement to say that I was completely astonished to learn that I did, in fact, have a family. A garden party was planned at my sister's house in Chicago, and I was invited to attend with my daughters and grandchildren. I readily consented, and we traveled to meet the family I had no idea existed. I was now in my early 70s, but I was still in excellent form, and I am glad to say that I am not too hard on the eyes. Many of the women in my region had asked me out on a date. My girls were continually attempting to fix me up with a friend's mother or grandmother, or anything along those lines. I always said no because my heart belonged to Yoko and nothing could change that. We stayed in the Chicago region for a week and enjoyed meeting everyone. I asked my newly discovered family if they would consider visiting California when they had time. One of my brothers worked for a newspaper and his friend was a reporter. He created a human interest article on what transpired and how a long-lost family was eventually reunited. It was a heartfelt story, perhaps a little cliched, but fundamentally right. The story contained a lot of information about my life, as I was portrayed as coming from an Oliver Twist type of background and having been decorated as a heroic retired career Army combat veteran with many years of experience. I was never interested in social media, but my girls persuaded me to create a Facebook page. I made the website, and my daughter shared the article written about my family. To my surprise, I received a note from the wife of my old coach, who had treated me so nicely. He died several years ago, but he constantly told his wife that he wanted to know what happened to me. When I heard that, I felt like a jerk since I had made no attempt to find them or let them know how my life had gone. I had no idea how powerful social media could be in connecting with people and locating those we have loved and lost. I also got another mail from the one and only Paula. She asked to visit me the next time I was in Chicago. I consented, primarily out of curiosity. I hadn't seen her in over 50 years and wanted to check if she looked like the photo. I must confess that she still looked pretty in her shot. When I returned to Chicago to visit relatives, we planned a date, and I met her at a great fancy restaurant. Her life narrative was intriguing. She had been married 5 times, and each marriage had ended due to mutual infidelity. She had multiple children. I wasn't able to follow the entire narrative, but she allegedly became pregnant by a man who was not her spouse. She divorced her husband and married the child's father. However, she supposedly became bored and cheated on that man as well. My brain was spinning as she told me this long and complicated story. She then stated that I was the only man she had ever loved, and she let me leave. Her excuse was that her family had put a lot of pressure on her to break up with me since they considered me as an orphan with few opportunities. I did not respond to that, but I did not believe her explanation. I had seen her enter that hotel with that guy many years ago. She was ready to go inside with him and partake in the romantic antics that must have ensued. I wasn't a chump. Throughout the evening, all I could think about was how lucky I was to have escaped harm when I saw her walk into that hotel with her new lover. I must confess that it was a fun night, and I was pleased to reunite with her after so many years. She asked if I wanted to see her again, and I told her I would gladly take her out to dinner in California if she ever came that way. Paula informed me she rarely travels and would never leave Chicago while her children and grandchildren were present. I did tell her that I would gladly take her out to dinner again the next time I was in Chicago. I haven't heard from her since I returned home, but that isn't a huge deal to me. Maybe I'll look for her the next time I'm in town. So we ended the night with a kiss on each cheek and a hug. I could see she was wondering about what ifs, but I am pleased to say that I had no such thoughts. I had been blessed with an amazing wife, family, and life. I wouldn't have changed it for anything. It astonished me to think that the lowest time in my life led to the highest. My main regret was that Yoko and I didn't get to grow old together. She was a fantastic woman, a devoted wife, a kind mother, and an excellent partner. That night, as I went to bed, I thought of Yoko and realized I was approaching the end of my life. We'd be together again soon, and I was looking forward to our reunion at the next place. Remember that time moves on. Here is the next story. I thought I understood what betrayal felt like until I discovered my wife with another man. The lady I loved, who promised me forever, wrecked my world in a moment. I watched, helpless and outraged, as she lied about her nights out, her deception, and her affair tore my heart out. In that instant, I recognized our marriage was ended. She sought forgiveness. Trust, however, is never the same after it is broken. The truth burnt like acid, and all I could see was the life we created, crumbling to dust. This is not merely a narrative about infidelity. This is a story about treachery, revenge, and the price of love. This story is very close to our hearts. It's a roller coaster of feelings. Please stay tuned to the very end. Now let's begin with the story. I knew there was going to be trouble when they strolled into the bar. Not bodily, but emotional. I did not want to hear it. Until a few months ago, I considered them friends, even when things were terrible. If they had simply kept their lips shut, they would have been okay. They knew about her affair. I felt like I had been hit hard. I made it apparent that they were no longer my buddies. Of course, they attempted to argue. They did not want to take sides. They thought she would see how damaging her actions was. She still loves you. They said it wasn't important to me, and I told them that. It took several meetings and heated debates before they realized I was serious. To this day, if someone tries to talk to me, I either turn away or leave. I believe they finally got the point. The few people with whom I still communicate make an effort not to bring up her name. If they did so by accident, I just excused myself and left. It had been 6 months. The paperwork was done, statements were given, and my offer of a 50-50th share was more than reasonable. It was almost finished. She was fighting very hard. We tried arbitration, but they gave up when neither of us would compromise. They mostly talked to her, attempting to convince her she was receiving a good deal. She then advised counseling. I declined, telling the judge that it would be a waste of time and money because I would not compromise. The court listened as Becky threatened me with imprisonment. I said, "Okay, just tell me when I should turn myself in. Are you that positive?" "This marriage cannot be saved," the judge inquired. "Yes," I stated I would not. "Let me stress that we will never live with or have a relationship with her again. We have no children. Since this began, we have had very few friends in common. My business partner and his wife assisted her with the affair, so I am done with them. Divorcing her will be little in the grand scheme of things. Is it clear enough? I might have overstated it." She determined to put my determination to the test. I spent 3 weekends in jail before she realized I was serious and ended counseling. They were on a mission. You could see it in the women's eyes. The men simply seemed uncomfortable. I was certain they weren't there by accident. The bar was in another town, 25 miles away. I informed my new favorite bartender I didn't like the people in my previous one. In her mid-40s, she was quite sharp and had seen everything. She got the narrative out of me in bits and pieces, generally after at least 4 beers. She'd been married to the same man for 21 years. They were the owners of the tavern. What I liked best about her was that she never expressed an opinion, even though I could tell she wanted to. Finally, one night I told her to express her thoughts. This is a one-time opportunity that will never be mentioned again. She glanced at me for a moment and replied, "Clearly, I've only heard your side of the story. It could be fantasy and nonsense, but I don't think so. You were probably right to leave, but you might want to hear her side of the tale. I am sure you have questioned how everything went wrong. It might help you. It may not. It might make you even angrier. Still, human nature is what it is. It could be helpful to listen to her. It's up to you. This concludes the conversation. The next beer is on me. God, I adore this woman. A mother figure who would give you as much alcohol as you wanted for a price, if you gave her the keys first." She knew something was wrong as soon as they walked in and watched my face turn stone. "Friends?" she asked, nodding at them. "I'm not sure," I answered genuinely. "I guess I'm about to find out." "Don't do anything silly," she said. "Just give me a look and I'll get them out of here." It took them 10 minutes to gather the courage to say anything. Todd approached and stood by me. "Hello, Jessica. How are you doing?" "I am fine. The family is fine. Everyone is fine." "Cut to the chase, Todd. What do you want?" My short speech, delivered without emotion, startled him slightly. "Me with the boys?" He nodded to his 2 pals. "We don't want to do this, but Becky has them all down, wailing about how much of an asshole you are about something she's sorry about, but you won't forgive her. Do you recall being married? Hell, you're still married, and they refuse to let go, so we figured out where you were. So here we are. Will you speak with them if I say no? Tell them to leave me alone." He colored a little but continued on. They'd probably have heard all of their feelings and would still come after you. Please, Jace." I allowed him to stew for a minute. "All right, but remember what I told Jeff and Angela. Bob and Gloria, it still applies. I do it. We're done. Do not bother looking me up again, understand?" I believe he became angry, like I cared. "Man, I understand how difficult your situation has become. Will you now talk to them?" "Yes. Let me ask you a question before you leave. Would you let it go if your wife was cheating on you?" He smirked. "That will never happen. She loves me." "Yeah." Becky said the same thing. "It still does. Didn't stop. Or did it?" He frowned before I proceeded. "First, tell Sandy and George what I said, and then have them come over here and tell me they understand they may not be as whipped as you are. Then tell the girls that I'll give them 10 minutes. No more. So they better be careful what they say because they won't get a second chance." I figured I'd have time for another beer by then. I turned away and dismissed him. He stood for a second, his head hanging, before returning to the table. I watched in the mirror as their heads jerked up and a heated conversation began. Sandy threw up his hands and approached me. "I have always liked you, Jess. You do not deserve this. I'm a little ashamed of the whole thing, so I'm leaving. I'm sorry for bothering you, but Tina is determined. We're going to have a long conversation on the way home. This is the last time I will put up with her interference. I think this is it." He reached out his hand. I shook it. "So long, Sandy. You are one of the excellent ones. If I ever come back to town, I may search you up. Not Tina, however. George never liked me very much, so he had no trouble. The women watched me like a hawk. I made them wait a short time before walking over. I sat down and they started talking. I held up my hand, brought out my phone, and set the timer for 10 minutes. I could tell it really irritated them off. "All right, you are on the clock. Go." Tina rolled her eyes. "Really?" "Yes. A timer, 9 minutes and 49 seconds. I said. They chatted over each other for a minute before recognizing their error and looking at Carrie. Apparently she was supposed to be the spokeswoman. I know it's none of our concern, but they nearly fled when I smacked my hand down hard on the table. Finally, someone understands. You're correct. It is none of your concern, and you would do well to remain out of it. But you can't resist, can you? You're determined to speak reason into me since we're friends, right? So where the hell were you while she was out cheating? Where was your compassion for me then? A single word from any of you could have saved me a lot of grief. We would not even be here now. But thinking back, I don't recall you or any of our so-called buddies ratting her out. Many of you provided her alibis. End of rant. Let me reset the timer. They all sat there shocked until Carrie spoke out. She sounded annoyed. "Just please." This was a mistake. She never intended for it to happen. We did not know what to say. She is miserable. Her parents rarely talk to her anymore. Her supervisor placed her on probation. She cried when she saw you had saved her job. I believe she's learned her lesson. It's time to swallow your pride and take her back. I rolled my eyes. Time. I apologize. I did not read the wife cheating guidebook. I didn't realize there was a time restriction on how long I could be angry. So, everything is okay now? Fine. Kiss, kiss, promise, promise. We live happily ever after. Not really. You know, I'd be a lot calmer if you stopped thrusting her in my face. Do you still think you know what's best for us? They looked slightly guilty before nodding. Yes. Do you all feel this way? I looked around the table and everyone nodded again. They continued to chatter for a few seconds before I interrupted them. Hold on. Carrie, let's take a quick break from the clock. If you discovered George was cheating on you and we all knew but didn't tell you, would it be okay? Or would you finally forgive the spouse? Do you really love him? She grimaced and said she would eventually. And if the person he was cheating on was someone you knew, a friend, or perhaps married to a friend, could you forgive them too? She was clearly uncomfortable. They all appeared to be really apprehensive. I'd like to think I would after a while if I believed they were truly sorry. I grinned. That's excellent because Jan and George have been cheating for the past 8 months. In fact, when I heard rumors about you, I didn't believe them. And before you ask, I was about to tell you what I had heard. But other issues arose that required my attention. I left it alone because I thought you deserved to find out on your own, just as I did. By that point, I didn't care about any of you. This is why I moved here. I've heard they have a superior class of folks, so toss your pretentious, hypocritical words up your collective asses. I abruptly stopped breathing. There was absolute stillness at the table. So let the mending begin. That way everyone can get over it. Carrie, tell Jen that you forgive her. Jan, you have 4 months to assure me you would not cheat again, and everything will be okay. You'll have a stronger marriage because of it. I believe that is contained in the cheating handbook. I paused to gather my breath. Let's get Todd and George over here to conduct some blanket healing. And Carrie, don't throw too many stones, or I'll have to tell you an entertaining story about you and a stripper on your last girls' weekend in Myrtle Beach. Did I mention Becky recounted stories while she was inebriated and we were alone? Tina, you and Sandy require a new set of buddies. It appears that the old one has seen better days. We finished talking about me and Becky, but it appears that you two have a lot to talk about, so I'll be departing now. Let's not do that again, ever. Bye. Was it the wrong thing to do? Maybe. But that did not worry me much. Without sin, and so on. There was a lot of screaming, crying, and more than a few slaps. Sandy grabbed Tina and took her to another table. He wasn't loud, but he had a finger in her face and she was crying a lot. Finally, Marge, the bartender, asked them to leave or tone it down. Everyone except Tina and Sandy left. She approached me with timidity. I apologize. She spoke with her head bowed, avoiding eye contact. She summoned her confidence and glanced up. It's only that we felt you were the best among us. You both seemed quite happy. I didn't believe it when you broke up. And I assumed that once you calmed down, you'd speak it out and get back together. I'm guessing everyone, including Becky, was surprised by your reaction. Are you really finished with her? Yes, Tina, I am. But you're mistaken. You and Sandy are the best among us. Learn from this and be more cautious with your buddies in the future. Go home immediately. We love each other. If nothing else, remember me and Becky. You can never be certain about anything, specifically how someone will respond to cheating. Perhaps I'll see you around. Sandy apologized once more, and they departed holding hands. Marge nodded as they walked away. They seem like a nice pair. The rest I am not so sure about. I believe the divorce court in your town will get busier shortly. I nodded, agreed, and handed her my keys. Pay $30 for the taxi and switch to whiskey. My reaction astonished me as much as it did them. I'd like to think I'm a decent guy. Still do. However, you never know how someone would respond to stress and cheating. The fact that I loved her so much made the cheating worse. At first, I wasn't really drawn to Becky. She flirted too much and appeared a touch flighty. We did not date throughout the first 2 years I knew her. She was the best friend of my business partner's wife, Cindy, who was always trying to set us up. Give it a rest, Cindy. We're simply not attracted to each other. I would suggest speak for yourself. I know she is interested in you. You would be good for her, Cindy insisted. I grinned as I kissed her cheek. But Cindy, will she be good for me? She had left it alone for nearly 6 months. Then Alan, my partner, requested a favor. I apologize for bringing this up with you, but it applies to all of us. Cindy, Becky, and their date. We are going to the theater tomorrow. But Becky's boyfriend and her had a big disagreement and split up. Would you join us and keep her company? I thought about it for a moment. I do not think so. I wouldn't enjoy it with an upset woman. But you've been talking about this show for weeks. Have you decided which dress you are going to wear? The black 5-inch heels, perhaps, Alan joked. We smiled and returned to work. That evening, Cindy called. Please, Joyce, she's a mess and may benefit from the companionship of a decent man. But I don't need to be with an emotional woman. I promised she'd behave. Kindly, please. I exhaled. All right, I just want to see the show. We went to eat first. Becky was calm but not whiny. I gazed at her for the first time. She was thin, with world-class curves, auburn hair that reached her shoulders, and beautiful curls. Her dark eyes usually gleamed, and her mouth appeared to speak. Kiss me now. She was a nice package, but she knew it and made advantage of it. We enjoyed the show. The girls performed their favorite song from the show in the parking lot. Al and I joined in, and before long, half the parking lot was joining in. Later, we went to a tiny club to drink. I proposed it since I occasionally enjoy hearing myself ponder and converse. The club included a small band performing ancient melodies, generally sluggish. Alan and Cindy danced first, around an hour in. Becky and I were on the floor together. It was slow, gentle, and comforting. Thank you, she muttered. For what? I asked. For teaching me that nice guys still exist. Cindy told me to behave, and I did. I understand you did not want to come, but I'm glad you did. I agreed, realizing I had meant it. Becky, you are a hell of a woman. Turn down the flirting and invest in someone worthwhile. You will be happy. I am not condemning, just watching. She smiled. Thanks. Do you honestly believe I'm a good lady when you want to be? You have the finest bum I have ever seen. She flushed and punched my arm. Thanks. I believe the music had ended, and we walked back, conversing and smiling. Cindy was amazed. What were you both talking about? Jay said I'm a good woman most of the time with a great bum. Alan coughed on his drink and Cindy giggled. What? Don't say you haven't noticed. Cindy stared at him curiously. How about my bum, honey? He attempted to think of something diplomatic to say after I saved him. Cindy, you have a lovely bum, but it doesn't compare to hers. However, you have an impressive rack. Both women looked at me like I was insane. Alan began chuckling. Stop. Just resign while you're even, honey. You really have a lovely bum, and you're better than Becky. But all that counts to me is that I love you. Alan, nice rescue, I thought, remembering how terrific a salesperson you were. I received a beautiful kiss, and she made me promise to call her shortly. I did not call for 2 weeks. Cindy gave me a stern call that Saturday. She was beginning to believe there were good guys in the world. And then you stopped calling her. Her feelings are very hurt. Cindy, I said quietly, what has Alan been doing over the previous 2 weeks? You are aware of what he has been doing. You've kept him in the office all those hours to finish the Jameson account." "Exactly," I replied softly. "So what was I doing all this time?" "Oh," she remarked, realizing. "I apologize, Jace. I did not think I should have told her. So call her now. Tell her if she is interested. I will call next Thursday. I will. I was not thinking. Sorry. Relax, Cindy. She is your friend. Do you want to protect her and make her happy? I understand. I've got to go." She was still speaking when I hung up. I called her on Thursday, and she seemed happy to talk. We scheduled a date. She wanted to see a movie and then return to what she called our club. I included dinner. We had a wonderful experience. The movie was a poor tearjerker, but the supper and dance were fantastic. By the time we left the bar, she was securely under my arm. I surprised her by not coming in after dropping her off. She seemed dissatisfied till I explained. "I'd want to, but Alan and I have work tomorrow. We are almost done with this account. I called you honey, and it worked." I received a forceful kiss, followed by another. I eventually had to stop. "You know how hard it will be to work tomorrow? Thinking about their kisses. If I blow this account, you will have to help me." She giggled. "You will do okay. If you thought those kisses were wonderful, wait until I bring out the game." That was not part of the game. More giggling. No, it was "I like you a lot. First date kiss, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll have the game soon. Now dominate the corporate world. Call me soon." She and Cindy surprised us by arriving the following day with a home-cooked lunch. "You need to eat," she murmured as she walked by me. They set the conference table, and we ate like kings. Then they cleaned up and packed. I discovered her on the conference table, bouncing up and down. "What are you doing now? The table is being stress-tested. I do not want it to break when we christen it." Cindy giggled and joined her. "Yes, it will hold us. Goodbye, honey." Becky got up. "Goodbye, honey. See you this weekend. We're heading to the lake to grill and swim. You people need some sunshine." The girls had both purchased new swimsuits. Becky wore a modest top with an exposing bottom. Cindy wore a modest bottom and a skimpy top. I'm still not sure why we weren't thrown out of the state park. I believe the fact that the lifeguard and manager were both male contributed to the situation. Alan and I nearly cooked the steaks because we couldn't take our eyes off the gals. They giggled and put on slinky covers. We ate, played in the water, and competed in a volleyball game against 4 men. When they got ahead, Becky or Cindy would do something distracting. Despite our lack of skill, we emerged victorious. Just before nightfall, they drew us into the water and snuggled up to us. She pulled back and went beneath. She got back up, smirking. Cindy did the same. Sorry, but she thought we were becoming too heated. I looked around and noticed Cindy was naked, her top bouncing in the water. "Honey, will you take my cover?" "Not in the least. It looks like I'll need Cindy's cover too. Is that our top?" Cindy squealed when she saw it. Becky mocked her, telling her she needed to come retrieve her cover while Alan simply grinned. Finally, she threw it to her. Hers was lighter, and it was like watching a wet t-shirt contest when she stepped out of the water. I heard a gasp and looked around. 3 teenage boys stood there looking. Cindy smiled, stretched, and asked Alan for a towel. Becky bent over, revealing her bottom, and handed Cindy a towel. "Night, boys. Perhaps we will see you next week." They walked towards the automobile. We followed, relishing the vista and laughing. That night will live in my mind forever. Even now, as hurt and heartbroken as I am, I grin just thinking about it. It is very hot. One of us would provide food while the other worked. We discovered that the conference table was really strong. What about the couch? Not very much. We had to replace it after Alan and Cindy ate lunch on it. We were on the verge of moving in together when we encountered a stumbling block. I've always felt like that was a warning I should have heeded. We obtained the big account we desired, but it required hard hours until we could afford to hire staff. I frequently worked longer hours than Alan to allow him to spend more time with Cindy. Becky and I hadn't gone out in 3 weeks. She was a gorgeous woman who was used to receiving a lot of attention, which didn't sit well with her. She was upset during our previous 2 phone calls, despite my apologies. One Saturday at 5 p.m., I decided to call her and spend some quality time. She was not home. When I called Cindy, she stated Becky was out with her work pals. After Cindy chastised me for not paying more attention to Becky, I was not in the mood. Okay, if that is how you feel, tell Alan he works every hour. I start next week. Cindy attempted to backpedal, but I hung up. Becky called 40 minutes later. Where are you now? She asked. I could not reach you, so I returned to work. Enjoy your night out. I will call you tomorrow. She was still attempting to speak when I hung up. Cindy had ruined my mood, and I wanted to be alone. I decided to acquire some hot dogs from a mom and pop restaurant down the street that had excellent hot dogs and onion rings. After all, I would not be kissing anyone tonight. On my way out, I grabbed a couple of breath mints in case I started walking home, but then I remembered a club Cindy had mentioned. It was similar to the one we liked, but with more jazz. She read about it in the entertainment section and decided it would be a good change. Maybe they'd be there, but either way, I could look it up. It was a pleasant setting with low lighting, dark wood, a pub-style kitchen, and a decent bar. They had a three-piece band that included drums, piano, and stand-up bass. They were quite good, even though I'm not a big jazz enthusiast. I remember thinking Becky would enjoy it when I heard her giggle. This is where she had gone with her girlfriends. Sneaky, tiny devil. I began walking into the lounge area when she appeared, arm in arm with a man I had never seen before. I'm heading towards the dance floor. It did not worry me at first. Others regularly invited us to dance, but not very often. I looked around and saw no single girls. I decided to stay back and observe what was going on. I took a little table to the side and watched. They danced 3 more times, the final with his hand firmly against her rear. The final kiss, as well as the one at the table, cemented it. I hadn't asked her to be exclusive, but I expected her to be open if she was dating other people. It ached a lot. I dismissed it as a life lesson and began to leave. But then I remembered she had mentioned she was out with the girlfriends. I summoned the waitress and had her serve them a round of drinks in exactly 5 minutes, leaving a $20 tip. She had the radar of a skilled cocktail waitress. "There won't be any problems, is there?" she asked. I assured her that they were friends, and I felt dumb for not noticing sooner. The drink was an apology for having to leave and not talking to them. She bought it, sort of. I waited a minute before dialing Becky's number. The band was on break, and I could hear it ringing from where she sat. She looked at it, murmured something to her partner, and then responded. "Hello, honey. Change your mind?" she inquired, sounding earnest. "No, I'm exhausted. It is excellent for me. Say hello to the girls for me. Where are you now?" It sounds silent. The females needed to use the restroom when the band was taking a break. "I'm looking after the beverages." The waitress approached with their drinks. They looked over at me, and I walked out from the shadows. "Isn't the fedora nice? Tell your girlfriend not to enter the ladies' room dressed like that. They may not comprehend." Her mouth opened and closed several times before she recovered. I was already out the door. I sat in the parking lot across the street watching as she dashed out, looking about frantically. Her date walked out and said something, but she brushed him off. The phone started ringing and I disconnected it. I did not feel like conversing. Her date argued some more, but she just shook her head. No. He eventually gave up in disgust and returned inside. Cindy arrived 15 minutes later in her SUV. Becky got in and they drove to my flat. I headed the other direction. I'm not in the mood for drama. I located a motel, paid cash, and slept for 10 straight hours. When I came home, there was no one in my parking lot, so I showered, changed, and went back outside. I headed to the office, but Alan and Cindy were there. I assumed Becky was hiding somewhere, so I drove past, traveled 4 hours to the mountains, called, and left a message at their residence. I told them I needed a break and will be back on Tuesday. I slept, wandered about in the sunshine, and thoroughly liked it. I ate when and what I wanted and even stopped at a tourist trap to get them some souvenirs. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the office early. I parked the car out of sight, and Alan nearly jumped out of his skin as he entered. He grabbed his phone immediately. "Use that and I will be gone for the rest of the week. Understand?" He nodded and watched me warily. "Good. Let us go to work. I feel fantastic. That short respite made a huge difference. I have come up with some fantastic suggestions. Let me know what you think." We walked away until lunchtime. He was enthusiastic about the new ideas. At lunch, I told him I'd see him in an hour and departed. Usually, I ate a sandwich at my desk and continued working. He had returned 20 minutes before me. Cindy arrived 20 minutes later. She took a big breath, but I raised my hand. "I'll speak first, if you don't mind. Becky does not owe me anything. Honestly, we hadn't discussed becoming exclusive. I would have despised it, but I could understand why she wanted to see others. However, she didn't. She then lied about who she was with and where she was. This tells me a lot. She began to speak, but I raised my hand again. Not finished yet. Tell her to stop bothering me. I'll call her sometime this week. One more thing. Did you know she went on a date and then lied to me about it? If I believe you do, it will have a significant impact on our friendship. If I can't trust you, then you're not my friend. Understand? She paled slightly and Alan appeared uneasy. Then she lied. I did not know, or I'd have stopped her. Jace, I'm also upset at her. I believed she was finally maturing. I am as disappointed as you are. When I asked about it, I chewed her out. That night, she called me from the club, crying. We spent half of the night watching and waiting for you. We finally arrived at my house and crashed for a few hours. You had arrived and left while we were asleep. Can I at least phone her and tell her you're back so we can talk? I sighed mentally. Perhaps she was telling the truth after all. Yes. Call her right now. If you want to keep your home and the automobile you drive, you must allow us to return to work promptly at 6 o'clock. I told Alan that I was leaving for the day. You are kidding, right? There's still a lot to accomplish, but everything will be here tomorrow. I won't kill myself anymore. At least for a time. I left him with his jaw hanging open. The next day I posted an advertisement for an associate. Alan was unhappy because it would cut into his profits. Fine. I said, I will pull the ad, but if we do, we will be paid hourly from now on. The salary disappears. He didn't like it because he knew I worked at least 3 times as much as him, so he shut up. I employed a woman just out of school. She was talented but lacked real-world experience. I ended up spending a lot of time with her initially, but she progressed well. Our business really grew because we were able to handle more. Ida and I kept the ideas flowing, while Alan handled the contacts and sales. I called Becky as promised. She wasn't sure what to say. I waited. I apologize. She eventually spoke. For what? For lying to you. For going out behind your back. I was scaling the walls because I wanted to get out. I was not going to sleep with him. I simply needed a companion. I understand. And you hadn't promised me anything, but I anticipated honesty, and you lied. Tell me how I can trust you enough to return to where we were or move on. You know, I wanted more. I assumed you did too. She became enraged as a result of that casual comment. Damn you. You always kept it in the back of your mind. I couldn't measure up, did you? I bet you patted yourself on the back and said, I told you so. I was falling in love for the first time ever. I felt terrified and lonely. I botched up. I apologize. I spoke gently, just above a whisper. I'm sorry, too. I was already in love with you. I hung up after she pleaded with me to stay on the phone. I didn't speak to her for 2 weeks. When I did, I wasn't expecting what she said. Would you like to go to the club on Saturday? Perhaps eat at the new Indian restaurant? I had previously been taken aback by the hostility in her voice. I choose to pardon the poor offender. My penance is done. I hung up gently. I didn't need it. Cindy called me. What have you said to her? I asked her out. Silence. I believed she had hung up. What exactly did she say? She did not say yes, and that is all that matters. Good night, Cindy. 2 days later, Cindy called me again. I'm with Becky. Will you talk to her if I give her my phone? Yes, if she would talk instead of ranting. Make her understand. It's becoming increasingly difficult to avoid speaking with her. If she wants to express something, do it without drama or outbursts. Tell her, then hand her the telephone. I overheard a few minutes of whispers. Jace. Hello, Rebecca. Jace, I sincerely apologize for everything. I would like to start afresh right now. I want you to recognize me as a new person, not the person you used to know. Alan wants to barbecue on Sunday. Will you come over and visit or grill? She gave a small laugh. Both. I would like to actually eat. Make a potato salad. And it's a date. I will, thank you. Jace. It took 5 months to regain a sense of intimacy. I dated other people, which made her quite furious. I told her up front that I couldn't go out with her. And why? She bit her lips rough and held back. When we agreed to get intimate, we had a major conversation. If we get intimate, it's just us, nobody else. Do you understand? Even if you only go out with old buddies, if I find out from someone other than you, it's finished. There will be no rising from the ashes this time, and I do not intend to be your jailer. I will not be checking on you. You are solely responsible for your own mistakes." She agreed too quickly for my liking. "I want you to think about this, Becky. I'm talking about long-term commitments here. Don't respond yet. I need to get tested before we do anything. I don't want to bring anything extra the first time." She knew I had sex with others. I could see her tears, but she fought them off. "All right, honey, I have not been with anyone since you. But I'll do it too. I already know the answer." A week later, we swapped a clear bill of health for apartment keys. Making love with Beck was always exhilarating, but the welcome back segment almost killed me. I fell asleep twice at work. Alan mentioned something to Cindy, and she asked Becky to let me rest occasionally so she could keep her house. She consented grudgingly. I continued to work long hours, although not as much as I had previously. The event taught me how to prioritize. We'd been living together for 8 months when I called her at work. "Can you take off this afternoon?" I would not ask, but it is very important. She agreed immediately, so I picked her up and gave her a drive-through bag. "Sorry, sweetheart. This will have to keep you over till dinner." I refused to explain what it was about. We drove to a good area and parked in a driveway. There was a for sale sign in front, and a broker was waiting. "Is she your wife?" she inquired gently. "Maybe." I said, "I will know by the end of the day." Becky looked at me like I was insane. "So let's have a look, sweetheart." "Really? Men have no idea what's truly important in a house, don't you agree? They understand structure, masonry, and wood, but they lack an appreciation for comfort and potential." She continued to converse as she showed her about the house. 3 bedrooms, nice large lot with a modest patio. "Please excuse me for a moment while we talk," she said to the realtor before pulling me into the living room. "Look, honey, there's a fireplace." She wasn't going to be distracted. She backed me up against the mantel. "What the hell is going on here?" "Seriously, Beck? Isn't it apparent that we're house hunting? I do not wish to start married life in an apartment. Besides, when we have children, we'll need the space." I don't think she heard much about her marital life before rushing into my arms. I scraped the back of my skull on the stone mantel and didn't care. Then she cried. She then giggled. Then she became serious. "Where is my ring? I haven't received it yet." I figured we'd pick it out together. The realtor came looking for us and heard our last words. She laughed. "What have I told you, dear?" "Clueless. I swear that if we didn't guide them, the species would disappear. Are you ready to look at a couple more houses?" She almost dragged us both out. I got to sit in the back while they talked. Location, school districts, and shopping opportunities. I stopped listening after 5 minutes. We looked at 4 more before returning to our car. She wanted to look at that one again when we went to the living room. She looked at the mantel, grinned, and said, "This one?" It took a week to complete the papers. Our business was growing. We had hired another associate, and Alan was training a new salesman with the large down payment I was able to provide. We were able to relocate in less than 1 month. Of course, we did not bring any of our previous furnishings. I let her go till she reached the patio. In the garage. "Mine?" I spoke defiantly. She chuckled and agreed. I spent a little money to create an outside kitchen and living space. We even had a clay oven built. I loved it. We ended up cooking outside on a regular basis for 10 months of the year and occasionally for the remaining 2. Cindy was a touch jealous, and before we knew it, we had new neighbors a block away, making it easy to share rides to work. I swear they made a groove on the sidewalk, moving back and forth. Things went well for 3 years. Cindy was unable to have children, so they went through the lengthy and frustrating process of adoption. Their persistence paid off when they received a set of twin girls aged 18 months. We had a small party to celebrate, which evolved into a tear fest for the girls. We learned what it was like to watch 2 energetic toddlers. "Your life is over." I laughed as I told Alan. "No, it is not," he answered, clearly in tears. "It's just the beginning." I was quite quiet as we walked home. Becky was no exception. I came to a halt at the end of our driveway when I asked in 4 months. That way I won't have to carry him or her around in the heat of summer. The neighbors must have thought we were crazy to be on our knees in the driveway, hugging and crying. Immediately following that conversation, the economy began to slump. 6 months later, Becky's company unexpectedly declared bankruptcy. She didn't receive severance money. She didn't receive her vacation compensation. Nothing. She was quite distraught. Calm down, honey. A lot of individuals are failing, including some of our largest competitors. We are receiving a lot of interest from their previous clients. I may have to work a little more, but everything will be great. And as competent as you were at your work, you will be snapped up. The economy worsened, and she never found another employment in her field. Nobody wanted to pay her what she was worth. Despite her experience, they could earn an MBA right out of school at half the cost. She worried. She brooded. She and Cindy joined a gym that was close enough for them to go to while pushing their kids in strollers. This kept her going for a few months, and she never got out of shape. After a few months, she was solid as a rock. She began volunteering for major causes, intending to network and get work as a result. I didn't like it because she was gone virtually every other weekend for some charity event or another. But I kept quiet, thinking it was beneficial for her. One Friday at 2 a.m., she came in and woke me up with a first-class B job. I landed a job. I'm the Sloan Group's new assistant event coordinator. Tonight was my tryout, and they loved what they saw. They represent 4 important charities. It isn't as much as I was making before, but it's enough to get started. She was on an emotional high, and I cuddled her while making the appropriate noises. It had been nearly a year and she was still not pregnant. We saw the doctor. He reviewed the tests he'd requested. You are both fine. Everything is in fine, functioning order. There is no reason why you won't become pregnant soon. My guess is that she's been stressed out over the economy. Animal birth rates decrease when the food supply is limited or there are too many predators. It's the same for women. Birth rates reduce in stressful environments, such as war zones. Go home, practice a lot. It will happen, the doctor said, but it did not happen. The next day during lunch, she approached me. Honey, please do something for me. Sure, baby, what do you need? She fidgeted. I would like you to let me go back on birth control for another year. Allow me to become comfortable in my new job and accumulate adequate time. I'm not going to lose it over a pregnancy. Just 1 year. Honey, I promise. I was a little relieved because the economy remained poor. I agreed because I hadn't seen an upswing in quite some time. We were undertaking extra effort to compensate for the failures of other companies. It was difficult because if we couldn't accomplish it for the price they wanted, there was another ad agency down the street that was clamoring for business. Her work included visiting events to ensure they ran successfully. I attended when I could, but she became increasingly independent. She told me not to worry because she was working anyhow. As the husband of a significant participant and business owner, I was sort of expected to donate to as many of the charity they represented as possible. We chose the 2 we thought were most important and committed to them. We even sent someone to represent the company at events from time to time. Alan and Cindy went a couple times, but he was just as exhausted as I was, so he backed off. The economy was finally turning around. I could see a light at the end of the tunnel. Becky had been at her job for a year and received a small promotion and rise. We began talking about a family again. I talked Ida and her husband into representing the company at a few of the events. It kept our name in the spotlight and allowed Alan and me to work harder. Ida had advanced to the point where she was being courted by competitors. We had a long conversation about it. I assured her that if she received a truly good offer, I would not hold it against her if she accepted it. She informed me that no one had made an enticing enough offer for me to consider moving just yet. I laughed. I saw she was a little sad and avoided me unless necessary. I assumed she'd finally received that fantastic offer. I called her in for a quick conversation. You have not been yourself recently, Ida. If I'm not mistaken, are you interested in talking about everyone else? Ida was a beautiful black woman, tall, striking, and usually smiling. If you got past her appearance, you discovered she had a smart mind. She looked down and smoothed her dress. One of her stress symptoms. I thought a lot about what I'm about to say. My husband has been pressing me to chat to you. So here it is. It might not matter. You might already know. If not, please do not be furious with us. I assumed this was it. She was giving me notice. She took out her tablet, fiddled with it, and gave it to me. A collection of photos of Becky with a man I didn't recognize. There were images of them laughing, holding hands, kissing one another, and dancing with his hands on her rear. He had her clothing adjusted so that the bottoms of her cheeks were visible, one in a semi-dark room and a fierce lip lock. These were taken over the previous 3 events we attended. I don't think she knew who I was or that I worked for you. She addressed me in a professional manner the last time she knew I was present. Maybe you already knew, but I didn't want to bring it to your attention. If you hadn't, please do not fire me. I was shocked. This had to be some sort of prank. I'd go home and Becky would giggle. All of our buddies would leap out and she'd say, "Gotcha," and explain everything away. But I knew everything was precisely as it appeared. I pondered for a minute before assuring a frightened Ida that her work was very safe. I requested her to transfer the photographs to my computer and burn me a physical copy. She stood. "You didn't know, right? I'm so sorry. If you require anything, please ask." She came around to hug me. It was the first physical interaction we'd had in our entire time working together. Again, I apologize. I am too. I said, "Please do not say anything about this." She promised and departed the office, terrified by the expression on my face. Despite being an idea man, I was stumped. I approached in the same way I always did. Is there any problem? I researched. All I had were amateur photos. I wanted hard evidence. His name was Johnny Walker, and he despised scotch. I should have been named Jim or Jack. I am a bourbon man through and through. He came highly regarded as one of the best in his field, so I hired him. It took barely 2 weeks to receive what I desired. We met in a bar run by one of his pals. We used one of the rooms designated for private events. I did not want to be seen going to his office or him entering mine. He agreed. Totally. I had even purchased a burner phone. I kept it secured at my desk so I could connect with him. I realized that sounds paranoid after all, if there was nothing I didn't desire. Becky became aware that I had her probed. It would not lead to favorable outcomes. "It's all here," he replied, handing me a little briefcase, pictures and video interviews with friends and colleagues. Some of them didn't even realize she was married. Apparently, she does not wear her rings at work. They were not very careful. I apologize. I handed him a check and took up the case. He stopped me. "You aren't going to do something stupid, right? Violence with a scorched soil. You've remained really cool about this. In my line of work, being calm might be dangerous. It isn't worth going to jail for. Pay off your losses and move on. If you cannot forgive her, I am not going to hurt her or him physically." At the very least, they both approached it with open eyes. They must have weighed the consequences of being caught. I decided I wasn't going to hide money, make demands, play games, or struggle to keep her. I shouldn't have to battle for her because of her conduct. There's nothing to fight over. She ended the marriage on her own. I'm just going to walk away. Does this make me weak? No. It makes me a man of sound judgment. Someone who remains cool and logical when under pressure. Uncommon in these circumstances, and they probably didn't think about the repercussions at all. Few people hire a lawyer. I shake my head. I figured I would wait for the report. He wrote something on a notepad and gave it to me. I work a lot with these three. They're all good. The first is a shark. He isn't satisfied until blood is spilled. The second option is the guy you want, if you want to end a divorce. Not a good option for you. The third guy is your man. He does not enjoy drama. He keeps things clean and quiet while doing his utmost to protect your interests. If you don't have somebody lined up, phone him. Mention me and you'll receive a discount. He walked to the door, turning to offer me additional counsel. If I were you, I would not watch the DVD or look at the photos. It will not aid your case and will imprint recollections on your mind. It will take years to remove. Likewise with the report. You already know everything you need to know, but read the contents of the red package. There is some intriguing information concerning your pals and their knowledge of her affair. We are not going to switch off the phone tap for another 2 weeks. I encourage you again not to listen to them. Call if you require anything additional. I brought the case to my office, removed the red envelope, and locked it in the bottom of my file cabinet. For the time being, I'm following his advice. I called the third man on the list and scheduled a consultation. Paul Whitfield managed a small 3-partner office. The offices were in a historic building with elaborate moldings and tall ceilings. He grinned when he spotted me gazing. We owned the building. I insisted on keeping the decorations. Gives the location character. I instantly liked him. He warmed up during the meeting, and after we finished, I had a divorce lawyer. I felt like I could trust. He agreed with the amicable split, but felt he could have done better with the settlement. This is not a no-fault state, but it should make things easier for everyone. If she does not fight, I believe she will. I've lately realized that I have no idea what she is thinking or doing. When can we file? Thursday or Friday, whichever suits you best. I thought about it. Can we finish it on a Saturday evening? He stared at me. This isn't going to become ridiculous, is it? I smiled for the first time. Probably wait until Monday to serve her. She should arrive home by 7 o'clock. Not in her office? No. Allow her to preserve some dignity. Besides, if she is fired, don't I have to support her? You're a smart dude. He grinned and shook my hand before returning to legal mode. Call me if you remember anything you neglected to say or ask me. We appreciate your business. Even if it is a sad business. I'll call just before she gets served, if you wish. I have my ducks in a row. I found a wonderful 2-bedroom house in the neighboring town. Over. I considered an apartment or condominium, but I prefer houses. It would be a 35-minute journey. But it was a peaceful neighborhood, and I didn't expect her to look for me that far out. I'd read the red folder. It made me very upset to learn how many individuals I knew were aware of or helped cover her affair. Their time would come, particularly the 4 of them. I behaved well at work and kept up appearances at home for the remainder of the week. She was feeling amorous on Thursday, so I let her warm up for the weekend. I suppose by now she was nothing to me. I didn't actually make love to her, but it wasn't really loving either. She got off, I got off, and I got off her. You appeared distracted tonight, honey. Do I stop doing it for you? She appeared fun, but I detected a fearful undertone in her statements. Beck, you have always done it for me. I am just exhausted and anxious. Let us get some sleep. I tried, but couldn't bring myself to cuddle, so I turned over and pretended to sleep. She snuggled up to me and spooned. Love you, baby. I didn't respond, still pretending to sleep. I believe she could tell I was pretending, but she said nothing. Finally, I couldn't stand it. We're getting into what Paul refers to as foolish terrain. I waited for over an hour after the event began, before going through the doors. I stood on the outside of the crowd, watching them clasp hands and exchange small kisses. The band began playing, and I watched them move across the floor. He was a greater dancer than I ever was. Other than that, I didn't see it. He wasn't as tall or toned as me. My great-aunt used to say that there is no accounting for taste or lack thereof. I was almost there when I stopped dead. Cindy. She appeared directly in front of them. They hugged, and everyone laughed. I wondered if Alan was aware she was here. I was like Moses splitting the Red Sea. People backed away after seeing my expression. Becky must have noticed how the crowd was flowing backward. She turned, still holding his hand, and gazed directly into my eyes. She hesitated for a few seconds before attempting to compose words and releasing his hand. He grinned the cheerful grin of a man who is content with his life and held on. Friend of yours, he murmured, eventually letting go and reaching out his hand. I snarled, husband. He paled and took 2 steps backward. I looked at Beck. Aren't you planning to introduce us? Chase, honey, it isn't what it seems. Give up. It's precisely what it looks like. My wife is with another man. How's that for politeness? I could have mentioned the a-hole my wife is causing. She's cheating on me with a shady guy who has no qualms about hooking up with a married woman. I was becoming more vocal, so I took a deep breath to settle myself. Her lover attempted to blend with the crowd. Several folks were watching. I called out to him, gaining even more attention. Where do you think you're going? You have the courage to sleep with her, but not stand by her when things get rough. That reveals a lot about you, doesn't it? But do not worry. She is yours now. I am done with her. Becky was pulling my arm, pleading with me to calm down and talk in private. I took her hand away from me. I get it, Beck. Do not try to explain it. Don't disrespect me by faking. There is an excellent reason. We're done, understand? I left something for you on the dining room table. It should bring back some wonderful memories. I looked at Cindy, who appeared afraid. Do not speak to me again. If we're in the same room, either stay away from me or leave. Actually, I'd like to know one thing. Did Alan know? She hung her head, which revealed everything I needed to know, then inform him we're done as business partners. He can buy me out or I'll sell my share. Things became disorganized. She called, Alan called, Cindy called, over and over. I didn't respond. I deleted the mails. I kept my automobile in my garage with the door closed. I walked to the supermarket and a pub. I didn't enjoy the bar, but the store was fine. I startled Alan by showing up at the office on Monday. He started speaking, but I stopped him. I know you now. I said... Cindy told me everything. I'll never forgive her for allowing her to keep it a secret. Tell your wife to remain away from the office if she persists on coming. I will let the business fail and then walk away. It is easy for me. That includes Becky, her partner, and all of our so-called pals. I've already contacted the police regarding restraining orders. They urged me to contact my lawyer. Becky and Cindy were hammering on the office door. I called Alan. If you want to stay in business, make them leave right away, or I will leave and never return. I could hear them arguing through the door. Becky refused to leave and Cindy supported her. Alan was attempting to make them understand. Thank you, girls. This is also his place of business. He has a right to be here. If you push it, he might seek a restraining order, which would be horrible. He stated that he will sell his half of the business. If I don't purchase it, he will sell it to someone else. We cannot afford that right now. He is the notion guy, the brains behind the enterprise. I only sell what he comes up with. Cindy, think about the children. I heard a lot more murmuring than stillness. Alan called me. They have left. You are welcome to come out now. I do not think so. I explained that as long as I'm in here, I'm safe. Return to work and request that Ida come in. He began to beg again, but I hung up. It has been an intriguing few days. Do you want to hear about it? Ida questioned as she sat down. Curiosity got the better of me, and I nodded. I was there. You forgot, didn't you? I almost freaked out when I saw you, Mac. Her husband and I tried to capture you, but you moved too quickly. Mac claimed he saw murder in your eyes. You scared many people. After your speech, Becky attempted to follow you, but Cindy and the guy were holding her back. Cindy instructed her to allow you time to cool off. Becky sobbed, claiming that if she didn't get to you, she'd never have another chance. But by the time she let loose, you were gone. Many people left following the incident. I bet donations were smaller than anticipated that night. Do you know his name? I asked. Yes. And what is his age? She said, where he lives, his car, his past, and everything else I could find. She shuddered slightly. You're not going to do anything cruel, right? Yes, I replied, making her pale. I'm going to ignore him if he hears a noise or notices a shadow. He'll assume it's me. He will be a worried wreck for a while before realizing I don't care about him. That will be the greatest insult. How about your wife? They had to virtually carry her away. She's starting to grasp how horrible things will be. I do not have a wife, I said, stone-faced. Then I grinned. But if anything occurs and you are single, I would be interested. Boys are not all evil. She smiled. I do not typically cross lines, but I would make an exception for you. We hugged, and it felt wonderful. She pressed into me, and I smiled. She smiled back. We worked the remainder of the afternoon. When I came out, I saw 2 envelopes on my bike seat, one from Cindy and one from Beck. I knew Alan was watching as I dropped them to the ground and walked away. I had hardly gone far when I noticed a familiar SUV behind me. I laughed. Let the pursuit begin, I thought as I rode my Yamaha Roadster, my only acknowledgement to achievement. Beck enjoyed our time together, discovering new locations. I abruptly turned right at a red signal. They were 2 cars behind and became stranded. I pulled into a parking lot 3 blocks away. I waited until they passed, then returned the way I had come. They were undoubtedly still looking for me when I pulled into my garage. I carried the burner phone I had purchased, leaving my regular phone locked in my desk. I still used it for business purposes, deleting everything except texts from customers and my lawyer. Eventually, a registered letter arrived, which I signed and returned unopened. My lawyer handled all communications. He described her as a firebrand with a penchant for colorful language. She lived in the house, and I paid half of the mortgage. I told Paul that it would cease 6 months after the divorce. By that time, I hoped to sell it. Or she could pay me off, but I knew she couldn't afford it. She refused to hire a lawyer. Paul shrugged. She is not obligated to acquire one, but the court will most likely propose it at the first hearing. She will try to drag it out to get to you. She isn't letting go. I'm fine with billable hours, but at some point, you should talk to her or withdraw the petition. He noticed the expression on my face and lifted his hands. I did not say go back to her, just continue ignoring her. She will eventually become tired and agree to the divorce. Let's wait for the hearing. Perhaps she will realize it is pointless and become sensible. I had a sense of hope. Do you honestly think so? Nope, he responded, smirking as he led me out. Her friends attempted to interfere for her, which was a poor idea. My responses spread, and most people realized it was a banned issue. Then her mother got involved. I've always liked her and told her that if she needed anything, I'd be pleased to help. But if she uttered her daughter's name again, I would never speak to her. My mom also got involved. I attempted to persuade her to see my point of view, but it did not deter her. I left and didn't return for 3 months. She eventually vowed not to bring it up again. I believe she got it. Now she played the victim while claiming to be correct. That did not work either. She did advise that I see someone. Anger is transforming you. Honey, you need to regain your equilibrium for your own health. I thought about it. I attempted to keep it apart from the rest of my life, but it never succeeded. It was worse when I saw Cindy. She still stopped by the office occasionally. She understood better than to say anything. She could tell from my eyes what I thought of her. She and Alan were both stressed out about attempting to rescue the business. Alan tried to discuss it once. I was intrigued to hear what they could say to excuse their behavior. Please, Joyce, I beg you. If you withdraw, we both know I will be out of business in 6 months. I worked just as hard as you to make this a success. I'll lose everything, including the house and cars. I have children to provide for. Instead of relaxing me, it drove me angry. Really? You are using the kids as a negotiating chip. Did you consider how I might behave if I knew my best friend was there to help? The love of my life cheats on me. You should have weighed the repercussions. Perhaps if you remembered how I reacted the last time she did anything similar, you would have spoken up. Were you thinking about the kids when you lied to me? He flushed with rage. It's time to get over yourself. She cheated on you. I apologize. I should not have let Cindy and I get entangled. I was attempting to protect you. Do I have to kick your mother to make you understand? That was not the right thing to say. If you wanted to protect me, why didn't you warn Beck that she was making a mistake and threaten to tell me? I believe you were more concerned with the business. This cash cow is depleted. Alan, you're skilled at what you do. You'll have an easy time finding work, especially as the economy improves. You may not have the same standard of living, but you will survive. Cindy could do something to help. It might give her a reality check. And as for kicking my behind, you have no idea how hard I want you to try. My mother advises I should unleash my wrath by hammering. You could assist. Now leave my office and do not return unless I ask you. Alan is 64 years old and weighs 60 pounds more than me, but he lacks my wrath. He grabbed me and spun me around. I did not give him a chance, swinging immediately. I poured all of my pain and wrath into one blow, hitting between his eyes. He fell like a building and collapsed. I stood over him and rubbed my knuckles. We are done here. Allow yourself to leave and do not return. The door had been opened, and our new salesman stood there with his mouth open. I believe I'll work from home for the remainder of the day. Will you help him get up? I said. It was 2 days before I returned. He had been treated for a concussion and resembled a raccoon with 2 black eyes. From then on, we communicated via email. The punch terrified me. Mom was correct. I needed to see somebody. Kathy Grimes was among the best in her business. According to what I discovered, it took 2 weeks to schedule an appointment. She was approximately my age. Very professional, with a pleasant and approachable demeanor. According to the images on the wall, she was happily married with 2 preteen children. Looking at the images, I commented, "Those are nice-looking kids." She smiled. "Thanks. Have you got any?" I sighed. "I don't think it will ever happen for me." "Never say never," she responded. "You are young. There is plenty of time. Sit down, please. Chair or table?" Her workspace resembled a pleasant living room. In one corner was a basic wooden table similar to that found in many kitchens with cushioned seats for added comfort. "Table, please," she smiled. "This is a good decision. It is more calming in the long run." Before taking a seat, she set the table with a pitcher of water, a coffee carafe, and a dish of cookies. Homemade oatmeal with raisins from a family secret recipe. "Water or coffee?" After pouring the water, she got down to business. "First, explain why you wanted to see me and what you intend to accomplish." I like her forthright attitude. I'm going through a tough moment, which is leading me to become angry. I'd like you to help me overcome my rage. I am tired of feeling this way. Even I don't like myself very much. That's quite straightforward. Now for the big questions. What made you so angry? Can it be fixed? Do you want to correct it or continue for the next 90 minutes? I discussed my past, The courtship, marriage, and beyond, how much I loved her and how badly she damaged me. She listened, took notes, and asked questions on occasion. The session came to a close. You've given me enough to think about. I'll go over the tapes before our next session, same time next week. All right, I replied. And if you find your fury growing beyond reason, call me. I'll do my best to fit you in. Do you want me to prescribe something to relax you? No thanks. See you next week. I'd been visiting her for a month and was feeling better when she requested to make some observations. You're a good guy, Jace. In a difficult scenario, you have been severely injured. You feel enormously cheated. That is why you respond so passionately whenever your wife is mentioned. I see this all the time, and I've never witnessed a more intense sense of betrayal. It's eating you up, and you don't understand why. My opinion. Do you still love your wife? She raised her hand before I could speak. That does not mean you want to return to her. The fact that your buddies backed her or turned a blind eye makes matters worse. Then I'll tell you to get over it and forgive her. It keeps the anguish fresh. You have to ask yourself whether you will be happier with or without her. I thought about it. It's a bad situation either way. She has cheated twice now. If I accept her back, she may believe that I will forgive her if she makes another mistake. I cannot take that chance. I could not go through it again. I halted, so I assume it's over. I still adore her, but trust is an issue. I can't see any way to trust her again. That says it all. And your friends. I understand how hard it is for them, but the people who assisted her gave her alibis and maintained her secret. They are dead to me. Looking back, they were primarily her pals. I have always been a loner. I like people, but I don't need to be around them. There is a song lyric. Being alone does not imply I am lonely. That is me. She nodded. That is congruent with my understanding. My opinion is to proceed with the divorce, but you need to speak with her. As long as you don't, she'll hold on to hope. Tell her why it will not happen. If she understands, she could reconsider opposing the divorce. You stated resisting counseling, but you are calm enough now to consider it, especially if it helps you acquire what you want faster. I can organize combined sessions and function as a referee. It's your choice. But that is my expert view. I thought about it. I was tired and wanted it to be finished. Perhaps counseling would help her comprehend and allow us to go on. I think she will come. She nodded. I am almost certain she will use it as an opportunity to present her case and get you back. But it may be painful. Set it up. I've been in pain since finding out more. Will not kill me. The unfortunate thing was that I knew she still loved me. I knew because I had listened to her phone calls before I removed the taps. The first few days after we parted, she mostly called me with messages that I didn't listen to but heard anyhow. Most were tearful appeals for me to speak with her and let her explain. After roughly 50 texts, it was down to a single sentence. Please talk to me, Jace, please. Her interactions with her pals were very revealing, especially with Cindy. God, we messed up, didn't we? Yes, we did. I'm not sure what I was thinking, Cindy. Why did I do that? Cindy giggled. You did it for pleasure. You are a quintessential cake eater, honey, thinking you could have both and he'd never know. I never imagined he would find out either. I am sorry Alan found out, but I knew he would never tell. He needed us so terribly. We all need him. You realize he's attempting to get out of the partnership, don't you? Says we should fix this. But how? Becky sobbed silently. Cindy, I don't think there are enough apologies in the world to rectify this. He's quite angry. He left me a folder including photos and interviews. You'd be surprised how willing some people were to throw me under the bus. I can't believe we were that arrogant. Her buddies discussed ways for getting me in the same room with her, including kidnapping. Most people pledged to talk to me. One woman tutor performed poorly. I am done. He nearly knocked our heads off. We deserved it. He asked my husband if I was all right with you having an affair and helping you hide it, giving an alibi. What was I doing while he wasn't around? I am still apologizing. Jack is quite angry. I'm pretty confident you're done. Beck, I am sure we are. I wouldn't ask any more of us to speak with him. Sorry, hon. He actually called her 3 times. She hung up the first time, but the following 2 calls were more revealing. Do not hang up, Becky. We are in tremendous difficulty. We need to talk. Our jobs are at stake. Greg, do you think I care about the job? The worst thing I've ever done was work for you. I could hear the displeasure in his voice. Get off your high horse, girl. You begged for the job. And it could have been my idea to play around, but you didn't hesitate once the subject came up. Speaking of that, I'd like to get together. He isn't coming back. You are already aware of this. The expression in his eyes that night terrified me. We could console one another. He would never know. She exploded. That was what we thought the first time, right? How did that work out? If he's this upset now, how do you think he'd react if he found out again? No means no, Greg. Never again. Calm down. It was only a thought. I have to go before the board of directors next week. They've heard about our affair. You'll probably get a call as well. We have to decide how to spin this. She truly laughed. Spin this. If they ask, I'll tell the truth. We had an affair. We both share the blame. I will tell them it is over and that I will never do it again. If they allow me to stay, great. I doubt they will. They will fire me, Becky, whether you get fired or not. I've only ever done this type of work. If I'm fired and the reason is revealed, I'm unlikely to work in this industry again. She softened somewhat. I am not throwing you under the bus. It was both of our mistakes, but I must tell the truth. If I don't and Jace finds out, I'll be completely done. Greg, I like you, but you aren't worth my marriage. She appeared sincere. So I called their boss and scheduled a meeting. He arrived with his lawyer, fearing I would sue. That kind of attention would hamper their fundraising efforts. They followed a tight moral code and need a good reputation to secure contracts. I played the cassette for them before you spoke. No, the tape was legitimately obtained. If necessary, I will make it public during my divorce. I let them sweat before making my pitch. AlphaGo is pursuing legal action for specific reasons. First and foremost, my wife must remain unaware of our encounter. Second, reprimand her, demote her, but do not fire her. I need her to have a job during the divorce. Do whatever you want with this guy. However, it does not appear to be his first time. What if it had been a significant donor, or the spouse or daughter of one? He is a disaster. Alternatively, wait for anything to happen. Do whatever you want. They agreed. Good. We can't write about this, but I have recorded this exchange. If I cause a problem, you can play the tape. I handed them the tape, but did not mention the other recorder. Still continuing. One more thing. You had a volunteer, Cindy Waller, who assisted my wife with the affair. It could be better if she wasn't involved with you anymore. They agreed shortly. Becky was demoted and placed on probation, but she kept her job. Cindy was informed that it was preferable if she volunteered elsewhere. She understood and complained to Becky. I believe Jace was behind it. So what? Alan might agree if he admitted it. You are evaluated by the company. You keep it, Cindy, and right now, I am toxic. Greg resigned without being recommended. I'm not sure where he ended up, but he gave Becky a goodbye call. It was pleasant, but I'm leaving with no recommendations. This is our final goodbye. She seems compassionate. I apologize, Greg, but we brought it upon ourselves. At least you aren't married. There was silence for a little moment. Actually, Beck, I am. She is currently serving in a less desirable location. She returns home in 3 months. Goodbye. You're a hypocrite. How could you do that to her? At least Chase is safe at home. I agree that I'm an idiot. But I felt lonely and you were present. I apologize for all of this. You're not going to tell her, right? No, I have no way to contact her. But even if I did, she does not deserve what I am going through. Love her well when she returns. Don't make this mistake again. Promise? I promise. I'm very sorry for how things turned out. I hope you receive them back. Becky, you are a wonderful woman. Goodbye. She cried into the phone for a few seconds before hanging up. I considered contacting his wife, but ultimately decided not to. She probably needed to know, and she'd find out soon enough. Kathy contacted Becky, who rejoiced at the chance to speak with me. She advised Becky to attend 3 sessions alone first. Kathy was attempting to prepare her, but Becky was too obstinate to acknowledge it. The first session has finally arrived. I suspected she would try to ambush me, so I arrived 30 minutes early. Becky was taken aback when Kathy brought her in and discovered that I was already present. Jace? She cried and tried to hug me. Kathy stood between us. Becky, I need this to work. You must give him room. He has made it obvious that he does not want any physical touch. If you do not obey the rules, he will leave and not return. Understand? After a few minutes, she calmed down and sat at the table. Becky, listen to me. I know you have something to say, and so does Jace. Maintain a calm demeanor, communicate clearly, and avoid drama. Would you like to go first? She nodded, and we waited. First, I must apologize. Jace, I understand what I did was wrong. You have every right to be angry. I have no excuses. I'm not sure why I did it. Was it worth the misery I'd been through? No way. I'd never be so dumb again. Not for anything. However, Kathy informed me that being sorry and apologizing will not change anything, if you cannot forgive me. I realize I damaged a good marriage. All I need to do now is persuade you to give me another chance. If you are still unable to forgive me after these sessions, I will withdraw from the divorce proceedings. Will you agree to talk to me? I looked between her and Kathy. Perhaps those individual sessions had helped. I spoke as Becky waited for me to say anything. I know that speech exhausted you, Beck. I've been thinking about it for several days. We know 5 couples that split up due to adultery and went to counseling to save their marriage. How many made it? I checked on Gary and Sherry, and they don't even cuddle in public. They no longer exchange the small touches they once did. It's been 2 years and things are still not back to normal. Can you live like that? Knowing I'd suspect you if you disappeared for an hour or two. If I immediately attempted to verify all you informed me, snooped in your purse and examined your computer and phone on a frequent basis. I could not. She trembled at my comments but maintained a determined expression on her face. If I could cuddle with you every night, I would do anything to comfort you, to demonstrate how I've changed, and you can put your trust in me again. I put up my hands. There it is, another magical word, trust. How would you convince me to trust you again? When we were dating, you cheated and then lied about it. I should have noticed it then. Now, after all this time spent planning a family and a future, you do it again. Were you lonely this time? I was bored because I was out attempting to start a business and provide a better future for us. I was finally releasing some of the venom, which felt amazing. Becky appeared horrified. Kathy stepped in. Our time is up. Becky, I'd like you to complete some homework before our next meeting. Consider what Jay said and explain your strategy for regaining his trust. Think about it too. Do you believe you can overcome your anger and try to mend your connection with Becky? Be honest and straightforward, that is all. Until next week. Jace, might I see you for a moment before you leave? Good night. Becky. We stood and watched as she walked to her car. Kathy gazed at me as she sat for 5 minutes before pulling out. You will never take her back, are you? No, I replied sadly. She exhaled. I did not think so. We need to refocus our sessions. Allow her to become accustomed to the notion before gradually withdrawing. If you still love her, break it to her gently. We tried, Kathy and I, but Becky would not give up. I tried everything I could think of, including some suggestions from Kathy, but Becky never understood. Finally, I just quit it. You betrayed your most sacred promise, Beck. You made it seem easy. Even now, I'm sure you regret what happened. But deep down, I have a sense you don't realize how serious it was. It had a significant impact on my life. You compare it to spending too much money or destroying the automobile. Didn't you feel something when doing it? She did not offer me a direct response. Talk about your feelings. You're the one who turned into stone. Give me one more chance, please. How can you sit there with no feeling while I break apart? You still don't understand it, do you? There is a lot of feeling inside me. Emotion, not intelligence, is what makes us human. All creatures think on some way, but aside from humans, who feels love or hate, desire? I just became better at regulating them. I let her continue for another 30 minutes before raising my hand and standing. It is over. Beck, accept this and move forward. Understand? I still love you, but it is no longer enough. The divorce is finalized in 4 weeks. It works well for both of us. You're still a young and gorgeous woman. You'll meet someone else when you do. If you ever feel tempted, remember us. He will deserve your best. I went away, my heart breaking as I heard her cry. Kathy called me 2 days later. I just ended my session with Becky. I couldn't tell you what we discussed, but she still believes she can win you back. Look for her. I know she'll be around, and I'm concerned. I'm so sorry it ended this way. I think you should keep seeing me for a while. Shall we schedule an appointment? I thought about it. Not right now. I will call you in a month or so. Thank you for everything, Kathy. Kathy was correct. Becky made one last attempt before giving up. I adored her family, except for her older brother. He was a police officer, shift commander, and bully. We tolerated each other. He began pulling me over on a regular basis just to mess with me and demand that I forgive his sister. I spoke to Paul. He asked me to log the next 4 stops. The commander had to explain himself to the assistant chief. The stops came to a halt, but he still disliked me. 2 weeks before the final hearing, the sun shone. Spring was in the air, and I was delighted. For the first time in quite some time. My Yamaha was humming along on Saturday morning when the lights turned on behind me. I drove over and was getting my license out, not looking at him, when he tasered me, handcuffed me, and tossed me in the back of his car. I turned back when he stopped in a neighboring park, dragged me out, and shackled me to a bench. He then handcuffed Becky to me. "You'll listen now. I'll be back in 45 minutes and I'd better see some smiling faces." Becky babbled while I tried to clear my mind, apologizing for what had happened. "Can we chat now, baby?" I stared at her, hoping to recognize the lady I married in her eyes. She was not there, like I have a choice. I replied, smiling, "Please hand me my phone. I had someone waiting for me. Then I'll be all ears, okay?" She took my phone out and handed it to me. I called 911. 911. "Declare your emergency. This is Jesse Gooding. I am sitting on the south-facing bench near the gazebo in Armstrong Park. I have been kidnapped and bound to a bench. And another person. I repeat, I was kidnapped." Becky looked horrified, screaming as she tried to rip the phone from my grasp. People in the park began to gather. "Sir, a car has been dispatched. Do you know who abducted you? Shift Commander Jeff Sterling. I am chained to his sister. Help! An automobile must have been nearby." It arrived in less than 2 minutes. Becky was still crying as the officer attempted to remove the handcuffs. Her brother rushed up, tumbling across the grass and scattering bystanders. "I got it, patrolman." The officer paused, staring at me. "If you leave me with him, you become an accomplice. Jail time. Maybe. Loss of career? Definitely contact someone higher up." He made the call, and 6 police cars surrounded us. Nobody was arrested pending an investigation. And I was returned to my bicycle. Everything fell apart the following day. Dumbass. I had everything on dashcam. I stopped the taser, the handcuffs, and everything. I could file charges, assault, kidnapping, and unauthorized use of a police car. Becky would be charged as an accomplice. I had Paul with me when we met with the DA to discuss the situation. My client will make things easier for everyone. He will not seek charges if the cop is penalized in-house, and his wife will not attend their final divorce hearing and will cease all communication with him. It's your choice. If they refuse, we will pursue them aggressively. Understand? They had no choice. Their parents did not want 2 of their 3 children in prison. So the agreement was accepted. Her brother was in anguish when he was released. He was demoted, assigned to the graveyard shift, and chastised. His possibilities for promotion were slim. He couldn't quit because no other agency would consider him. So it was finally over. I returned to my company and soon met a hot young blonde with a lovely heart who persuaded me that there was still sweetness and light in the world. I actually lost my friends, my business, and my wife. It took a while before I looked at another woman. My business failed because everyone was aware of our condition and stopped awarding us contracts. Fortunately, I received an offer she deserved, and she took her trainee with her before quitting shortly thereafter. The following month, I went into the office. There was a letter on the door. "You win, slime sucker." Ellen landed another job. The papers are on your desk. Sign it and the firm will be formally dissolved. She signed it, but I recognized Cindy's handwriting. There was still a little money left, and after I received my half of the house selling proceeds, I was in pretty good position. I could even take a year off if I wished. I took 2 months, hopped into my roadster, and went wandering. I wound up 3 states down and well below the Mason-Dixon line. It was one of the most beautiful cities I had ever seen, surrounded by mountains, friendly locals, and a relaxing atmosphere. The individuals were so relaxed that it felt like I had arrived in the 1960s. I stayed 3 days exploring tourist attractions and conducting research. I visited a few more towns, but none had the same atmosphere. So I came back, rented a place for a week, and went house searching. I looked at a few condos and apartments, but I preferred houses with nice yards. I discovered just what I was looking for. The third house I looked at was a modest cottage of 1,200 square feet with 2 bedrooms, a large yard, and a stream running through the back. The house was located a decent distance from the nearest neighbor. I rented it for a year with the option to purchase. Next, I began job seeking and got work with a small firm that caters to emerging and mid-sized businesses. They assigned me a few tiny accounts to see how good I was. After a few months, the boss wanted to discuss. I had to explain to him that my name was not short for Jason. My real name was John Charles, but my sister nicknamed me Jake and later shortened it to Chase. It stuck, and I gave up fighting it years ago when the conversation was crucial. He utilized both of my given names. John Charles, you've been doing excellent work. So good. I was wondering why you were here. I reviewed your resume, and it is all factual. I have a feeling you won't be with us long. So I'm giving you a new account. A friend of mine owns a highly successful regional vineyard and wants to expand his product nationally. They'll talk to him, schedule some meetings, and begin thinking. This could be really beneficial for all of us. I want you to grow with me. I was flattered. The vintner was a local who had trained in Italy for 6 years before returning home to care for his elderly parents. He took over their farm and exploited the north-facing slopes to cultivate vines imported from Italy. He began modestly, adding acres and increasing the winery as he could. He already owned at least 3 other farms and had increased his acreage. He had won several local and regional prizes for his sweet wines and wished to enter the national market. He'd already found a distributor and needed an advertising strategy. I dropped in for an anonymous wine sampling. The most were fairly decent, but several I didn't like for. I introduced myself and asked for Mr. Edwards. He came in wearing agricultural clothes. We shook hands, and he inquired why I hadn't scheduled an appointment. I wanted to try your product, observe your operations, and possibly work on some ideas. I don't expect you to drop everything and chat to me. I just wanted to let you know that I went by and made that appointment in person. What do you think of my wines? He inquired anxiously. I liked most of them, but I'm not an expert. I really like these. I purchased a mixed case to take home while conversing. I was coming up with a concept. I couldn't wait to come back and begin developing it. Jack, as he insisted on using first names, had me accompany him around while he discussed the winery, the provenance of the vines, and whatever else he could think of. I spent 3 hours with him personally. In my spare time, I rode my bike around the mountains and explored the surrounding area. I had some work done to increase its power, and it could actually move. I purchased a used but dependable 4-wheel drive truck for the cold winters. I kept my Dodge Dart, which was more than plenty for one person. I purchased the top-of-the-line turbo package, which was supposed to go over 180, but I never got it above 110. The car and bike were garaged, while the truck remained outside. One Saturday afternoon, I walked into a small tavern in the middle of nowhere. There were a few bicycles in front, mostly Harleys, one Gold Wing, and a few crotch rockets. I decided to stop and get a beer. The place fell silent for a moment because they realized I wasn't a local. I got a beer and took a look around. It was old but clean and tidy. The patrons appeared to know one another, and insults and banter flowed freely. The bartender spoke briefly after serving the second round. This property has been in my family for 70 years, he explained. We maintain an excellent reputation. No fighting. Nobody bothers anybody, particularly ladies. That will get you booted faster than anything. I complimented him, understanding the importance of a place where people could unwind. He enjoyed the compliment, stated the next round was on him, and left me. A large, bearded man took the stool next to me. Yours? He inquired, glancing through the glass at my bike. Yeah, he snorted. Another rice grinder. What happened? Where you are from, they do not offer genuine American-made bicycles. He was smiled to take the sting away. Which is yours? I asked. He pointed to an older, chopped-out Harley. Nice, right? He grinned. The forks are from Italy. The carbs, assuming their supply came from Japan. The tires from a British company manufactured in France still believe it's all American. He stared at me. Not kidding? Not kidding. Nonetheless, the bike is still really great. Following that, half of the bar joined the discussion. One guy said that his Vulcan was made right here in the United States. We ended up heading outside to look at all of the bikes. By the time we got back in, I had made new pals. I ended up spending most of my weekends in the pub, going on poker runs. Just riding in a group, they showed me locations I had no idea existed. 3 months later, I received my moniker. I had gone to visit Jack Edwards about the campaign we were planned. I wanted to film a commercial in his tasting room. The materials used were wood, stone, and glass, with a high ceiling and plenty of natural light. After I explained, he was all in, if we could do it on Monday. This was his slowest sales day. He brought me a case of wines that I had not yet sampled in order to solicit my feedback. Many of his wines have names related to the location. Old Mill Red was called after an old grist mill on the outskirts of his farm. Yankee Orchard White is named after a friend's apple orchard. The friend, a transplanted New Yorker, specialized in unusual and novel types. The juice from his Pink Lady apples was combined with a medium white wine, resulting in a pleasant flavor similar to fresh apples with hints of grape. It had been a long day and I needed to relax. I happened to stop by the bar on my way home and forgot what I was wearing when I walked in. There was a brief period of silence, followed by laughter and mocking. "Where have you been?" "A funeral." Fat Bob, the first person I spoke to after discovering the location, laughed. We had become close friends, and I would occasionally lend him my pickup when his bike broke down. I was about to explain when another voice interrupted. Amanda Patterson, also known as Baby Doll in the pub, was only 5 feet tall and had recently turned 20. She was cute, a redhead with a quick temper and a vocabulary that would make drill instructors blush. She was sort of a mascot, and no one hit on her unless she wanted to. "Hello, Amanda. I dressed up to ask for your hand in marriage." I got down on one knee as the bar erupted with laughter. She grew red and her rage flared. Her views on love and marriage were well known. She despised being called Amanda. "That's not funny, jerk. And what the heck are you guys laughing about? Do not make me kick your buttocks." That made them laugh harder. "I'll take that as a maybe. Do I have to wear the suit till you decide? Make me an honest man." She pushed me back and stomped off into the kitchen. Fat Bob helped me get up. "I would not order anything tonight. She will probably spit on it, or worse." Amanda helped in the kitchen on weekends for tips and food. I learned from Ellen, one of the bartenders, that Amanda had a difficult life. She was broke, living at a women's shelter during the week and sleeping on a cot in the rear room on weekends. It wasn't technically legal, but who was going to tell? She is a good kid. They're down on their luck. "We'd hire her full-time if we could afford it," Ellen explained. I inquired about her weekly eating habits and why she did not have a job. Soup kitchens, I believe. I never actually asked. I believe she has a juvenile record and has not finished. She attends high school but does not have transportation, which limits her career chances. Amanda stayed practically every night, only leaving to ensure she had a bed. I'm not sure why I did it. Maybe I wanted to feel linked to another person. Perhaps I wanted to offer her hope. I reached an agreement with Helen and Sam, the owners. I'd pay for her meals throughout the week. Sam agreed to let her wait tables and clean up 4 hours a night for $100 per week. I paid half of the amount. "Here," I said, offering Ellen $200. "Take her shopping. She needs new clothing. Tell her she may pay you back from her wages. $20 each week." Ellen claimed that was the first time she had ever seen Amanda weep. She purchased fresh underwear, 3 pairs of inexpensive jeans, 4 plain t-shirts, and 2 pairs of discounted sneakers. I wondered why Becky would spend so much money on shoes she didn't even like, wear them 3 or 4 times, and then dispose of them. Becky definitely spent more on makeup and accessories in a month than Amanda did. Amanda remained in the kitchen that night. Helen speculated that Amanda may have cried while chopping onions. I hoped I hadn't offended her too much, so I received the nickname Suit, which everyone thought was rather amusing. I made it a point to stop by occasionally in my work attire. Every time I wore a suit, I asked her if she had changed her mind. She had always cussed me, but now she smiled. The entire bar looked out for her. I never thought about how she felt until one night when a new guy started hitting on her. She smiled at first, but he became angrier when she stooped over to pick up the empties. He pinched her bum without thinking. She yelled, turned, and threw a half-full draft in his face. He pulled back to slap her, but I grabbed his arm and jerked him out of the chair. Sam and Fat Bob arrived in time to stop me from punching him. Amanda slapped the crap out of him. "Don't touch me ever again, jerk. Next time my fiancé will not be held back." She blushed when she realized what she had said and dashed into the kitchen. She came out later and thanked me for my assistance. I grinned. "Couldn't have my future bride injured, could I? I know you didn't mean it, but it might be best to let the jerks that hit on you believe you're taken. Think about it." She stunned the entire bar by kissing my cheek. After the whistles and cries subsided, she threatened to kick their buttocks if they continued to mock her and her lover. This set them off, and she ran back into the kitchen. 3 weeks later, I signed up for a poker run. We met at the bar, and they opened up the kitchen for breakfast. After dining, we formed a line outside. I felt a tug on my sleeve. Amanda appeared uncomfortable but determined. "Can I ride with you?" "Yes, if you have a helmet." She held up one. Fat Bob lent it to me. She was wearing jeans and a tee. It was cool in the morning. "Go grab your jacket. It will be cold without it." She hung her head. "I don't own one. I have not required it." I sighed and climbed onto the bike. "Come on, it's safer to cling on." She moved behind me, holding her hands down. "Have you ever been on a bicycle before?" I asked. She nodded. "Then you realize you have to. Hold on. Come on, I will not hurt you. It will be unsafe unless you do." Everyone knew she disliked being touched. She gingerly put her arms around my waist. I began driving slowly and she relaxed after a mile. We stopped at a Walmart. "Why are we here?" she asked. "To get you a jacket. I can feel you shiver. You can repay me later or accept it as a reward for riding with me. Either way, we won't leave until you have one." She objected, but I drew her inside and handed her a jacket, scarf, and gloves. "If you keep whining, I will leave you here. You need these. I don't want you to get sick now. Smile and congratulate me for being such a kind guy." She smirked. "Thank you, jerk. If you want to spend money, that's fine. Can we catch up to the others now?" We rejoined them at the second checkpoint. She was now clinging to my back. We stopped for lunch at a buffet. She wanted to keep near the bike, but I leaned in closer. "Get inside now, or I'll carry you in. Clear?" She nodded, appearing angry, but ate a lot. By the end of the day, she had become more relaxed. We won a $100 gift certificate from a Harley dealership. I handed it to her and covered her lips when she began to complain. When I removed my hand, she was outraged but said nothing. On the drive back, things got progressively worse. It started raining while we were near my house. I pulled into my garage. She hopped off the bike and threw her new coat, gloves, scarf, and gift certificate to the ground. "You believe purchasing me goods entitles you to something in return? Shove it!" she yelled and walked away. I took a minute to cool down before going after her. She'd walked about a quarter of a mile through the rain. "Get inside the car, Amanda." "Go to hell!" she said, attempting to move by. I grabbed her arm. "You have an option. Get in the car or I will force you get in. Understand?" She attempted to push by me, so I pushed her to the hood and whacked her. She yelled more out of surprise than pain. "I will get into the automobile, please. No more." I let her open the door and she entered. After a mile, she began to speak, but I raised my hand. "No words, or I'll pull over and finish what I've started." She nodded. I dropped her off at the bar and departed. I didn't return for 3 weeks. I handed Helen her coat, scarf, and gloves. "Here, these are for Amanda. She can either keep them or throw them away. I do not care." Helen slapped me. "What was that for?" I asked. "For 3 weeks we had to deal with a crying girl. She's had a difficult existence. She was abused and abandoned in 15 foster homes till the age of 18, then out on the streets. She believes that if someone is polite to her, they want something. She has an enormous crush on you. Give her a break. Be present and kind while she is here." The following night I went to a bar. "Amanda, come here." She picked something from the kitchen. "Scared?" I softened my tone. "I just want to talk." She emerged, appearing ready to sprint. "Sam, tell her she's been fired." Her face turned pale, but Helen laughed. "Only for tonight, hun. Do you still have your job?" "Just not tonight. Tonight we are heading out. Dinner comes first, followed by a movie." "Yeah." I cleaned up while drinking a beer. She blushed and hurried to the rear. I looked at Helen. "Go help her with her cosmetics so she feels lovely and calms down. It's only dinner and a movie." To everyone's amazement, she gave me a big kiss. "Maybe to you," she replied. Her cheeks were beaming as she emerged. Helen had helped with her hair and applied some lipstick to her. She looked wonderful. I placed her hand under my arm, opened the car door for her, and belted her in. I heard faint cheers as we drove away. "Is there anything special you would like to eat?" I asked, driving quickly. "Anywhere is fine," she answered, staring out the window. I pulled over. Look at me, Amanda. When I ask you a question, I want a straightforward response. Now, where do you want to eat? Do you want to try something new? Italian? Thai? Anything at all? She looked down. I've always wanted to taste lobster, but it doesn't have to cost that much. I went her to Red Lobster and ordered a platter of lobster in 3 distinct varieties. She was reluctant at first, but gained confidence. She even attempted to convince me to take a bite. Sorry, Amanda, but I don't like lobster. So why did we come here? She inquired, confused. Because you wanted to eat lobster. Besides, I adore shrimp. That made her happy, and she had no issue trying my shrimp. Following supper, we went to the movies. She chose a horror picture, which surprised me. After the movie, we proceeded to an ice cream shop, where she ordered a large banana split. For a small person, she ate a lot. Everything was well until we passed a bank where the clock and temperature were flashing. Oh no, I've stayed out too late to sleep at the homeless shelter. I suppose you'll have to take me back to the bar. All right, I responded, driving her directly to my house. She sat transfixed as I switched off the car and closed the garage door. Amanda, please listen to me carefully. I have 2 bedrooms. One of them will be yours for the night, and it is locked. You can sleep on a comfy bed, have a lovely shower. I will even prepare you breakfast. No strings attached. Nothing is expected. It is up to you. I am heading inside immediately. If you don't believe me, just lock the doors and recline the seat. I'll awaken you in the morning. It took 30 minutes for her to arrive. Where is the bedroom? I showed her, handed her a shirt to sleep in, and then went to bed, chuckling quietly as I locked my door. She must have slept like a rock because I showered, dressed, and prepared breakfast before knocking on her door. Time to wake up, sleepyhead. Breakfast is ready. I poured coffee, served the ham and cheese omelet, and set the toast on the table. I was just about to give up. She stumbled into the kitchen wearing my t-shirt, which hung to her knees. Despite her gradual awakening, she resembled a small child. She cleaned her plate. We stacked the dishes into the sink. Where would you like me to drop you off? I asked. I do not know. I normally hang out at the library until it's time to leave for work, but it won't be open for 2 hours. I guess you may drop me off at the park. I didn't like that notion. Tell me what, hang out here. I'll drive the truck to work and meet you when I get off. You can drive your automobile to the bar, scratch it, and you best run for your life. Understand? Her eyes were enormous. You put so much trust in me? I grinned. Are you going to steal from me? She reddened. I did not think so. In fact, I need my oil changed. Do you think you could drive it to the dealership for me? Don't worry, it's already paid for. I will call them. Will you do it? She nodded. I astonished her by kissing her cheek. Thank you, honey. I will call as soon as I learn out. Watch TV. Eat whatever you want. See you later. She rubbed her cheek as I went away. Everyone at work noticed my positive attitude. A secretary inquired if I had gotten laid. In reality, Gail, I spent the night with a hot little redhead who is nearly 10 years younger than me. Remember how energetic you were at that age? I'm lucky that I can walk. I left her gaping-mouthed, causing everyone else to chuckle. She had the oil changed for me. When I arrived home, the home was spotless. She must have been cleaning all day. Fat Boy stopped by to pick me up so I could get my car. He was grinning from ear to ear. What about you and the baby doll? She's hotter than she appears. You're a dirty old man, I remarked, smiling. Last night she just had a bed to herself. If you say so, he replied, still smirking. I was unprepared for what transpired when we arrived. She raced over to me, hopped up, and gave me a big kiss. Electricity rushed through me. The bar held its breath. This is how a lady should meet her man. She yelled. She stayed close to me all night until Sam told her she needed to go to work or he'd fire her. When I was about to leave, she requested if I could remain longer and drive her back to the shelter. How could I refuse? I warmed up the car and waited. She came out with a large backpack, which I had to put in the trunk. What's inside here? I asked. Everything I own. She remarked this while getting into the passenger seat. There's no place to keep it at the shelter. Someone would steal it in an instant. I considered how sad that was. As I drove, she realized I had missed the turn for the shelter. If I don't get there soon, I won't have a place to sleep. You are not sleeping there tonight. You have a room at my house. You earned it by cleaning the house and doing errands for me today. Consider this a thank you. She began to argue, but then switched the radio to a station I despised and increased the volume. That night, instead of going straight to bed, she took a shower, put on one of my t-shirts, laid on the sofa, grabbed the remote, and began channel surfing. Hello, I was watching that. It is boring. Besides, I am your visitor here. She decided on a show about 4 females and the secret they shared. I lasted 5 minutes. If you're going to watch anything that makes your head melt, I'm going to bed. Good night, Amanda. When I fell asleep, I could still hear the television roaring. The next morning, she woke me up by hammering on my door. Breakfast, sleepyhead. She repeated what I had stated the previous day. Consume it when it's hot. She prepared sausage home fries and grits. I was still adjusting to grits because I am not from the South, but they were growing on me. You do not keep much food, do you? She asked as I ate. Single guy? Not very much. There's no reason to. I sat with a slice of sausage. She piled the dishes once I was finished. Do you need a ride tonight? I asked as I stepped out the door. I'm off tonight, she announced, but do not worry about me. I've got things to do. Will I see you tonight? Maybe you're having a nice day now. I thought about her throughout the day. She was getting under my skin. I've dated some people since. Becky, nothing serious. I questioned how much of my feelings for her were petty and how much were genuine attraction. She was young. I felt like a cradle robber. She was wounded, loud, rude, and irritable. However, when we let our defenses down, she was sweet and affectionate. She was intelligent and strong, dealing with a difficult life in dignity. I felt she'd be an excellent mother, fiercely protective. The prospect of her becoming pregnant made me happy. She didn't realize it, but she was attractive. When I arrived home, the fragrance hit me. It made my mouth water. She emerged from the kitchen, her hair in a ponytail and wearing an apron. She kissed my cheek. Hello, honey. How was it at work? She inquired before nearly fainting with laughter at my expression. I made you dinner. Nothing fancy. I'm an excellent cook, but I haven't had much time to practice recently. It'll be ready in 30 minutes. Sit down. I will grab you a beer. Or would you want to drink tea after we eat? I need to talk to you. She had a determined expression. It needed to be serious. Tea would be nice. What can I do to help? She appeared relieved. I received it. Sit. Dinner was excellent. Roast pork with basil and rosemary. Roasted potatoes. Asparagus with handmade bread. Probably the finest lunch I've ever had. I stuffed myself and felt a bit uncomfortable. She smiled. I will view mass consumption as a compliment. Are you ready for dessert? She'd baked banana pudding. One of the things I've come to enjoy about the South. I was nearly unconscious when I pushed back from the table. She directed me to the living room while she cleaned up. When she was finished, she moved a chair in front of the couch. Did you like your supper? Is the house clean enough for Amanda? I have never seen the house cleaner, and dinner was fantastic. Where did you learn how to cook like that? She looked melancholy for a moment. Mama wasn't much, but she was an excellent chef. She taught me a lot before the drink killed her. I wanted to hug her so much. She shook off her memories and stared me in the eyes. I'd like to strike a deal with you, John. I want to rent a room from you. I can offer you $1.50 per week. In addition, I will prepare meals, clean the house, and do washing. I will even mow the yard. I will not get in your way. Please? The last few evenings have made me happier than I've been in a long time. I really can't bear going back to the shelter. Please. She stared at me, full of optimism. No. Her face crumpled like a balloon. Tears welled up as I ran out of breath. I'll collect my stuff. Will you drive me to the shelter? No, you're not going anywhere until we chat. So sit. Listen without interrupting. Promise me. Her expression was a mixture of fear and optimism. She nodded. I'm happy to let you live with me under these circumstances. 1. You won't pay me anything. Your rent will include the costs of cleaning the house, grocery shopping, and meal preparation. 2. I enjoy yard work, so I will do it. 3. You maintain your position at the bar. You can utilize the car for both work and household purposes. 4. And this is the biggest one. You must return to school and obtain your adult high school diploma, or at least a GED. She sat, mouth gaping. I knew she felt humiliated of her lack of education. Perhaps this will motivate her to do something about it. She eventually nodded her head. I will do that. Will you help me with my schoolwork? She asked. I will need it. I relaxed and smiled. I will do anything except do it for you. Deal. She jumped into my lap and kissed me before realizing what she was doing and jumping back, blushing. Sorry. I grinned. One more condition. You must give me a good-night kiss every night and one before I go for work each morning. There will be no accord otherwise." She blushed again, but grinned and extended her hand. Deal. We clasped hands and our lives began a new, glorious chapter. The next morning I asked her where the food had come from. She delivered me the receipts, and I paid her back before handing her my debit card and asking her to shop for food and other necessities we could need. I grinned the entire way to work, my cheeks tingling from the goodbye kiss. Nothing could take the smile off my face that day. Gail, one of my co-workers, became irate. "Did you see your tiny jailbait last night, honey?" she asked. "Yes. And this morning? She moved in last night. You need to find someone, Gail. It will help you become a nicer person." Her expression as I walked away was as sour as milk. The guys in the bar taunted me, yet they smiled while doing so. Sam shook my hand and Helen kissed my cheek. "You are a good man, Suit. I knew she would catch you sooner or later. We're only roommates, Helen. Nothing is going on." She smiled wider. "If you say so." Amanda grinned so hard when she saw me that I feared her cheeks might cramp. I was going to order a burger when she interrupted me. "Your dinner is in the refrigerator. Microwave for 2 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it." I took one beer shot, played a round of pool with Fat Boy, and returned home to a beautiful meal. She left work at 9:30 p.m. when the kitchen closed and arrived home by 10 p.m. She went directly to the shower. "I smell like old fries," she muttered as she emerged in a robe with a towel wrapped around her head. "What's on TV?" We settled into a household routine. I did the yard work and washed the cars while she took care of the house. She prepared the majority of the meals, but I insisted on taking her out to dinner or grilling for her once a week on Sundays. If the weather was nice, we'd bike solo or with our group. She was given a new nickname, Mrs. Suit, which she complained about but smiled at. Her 21st birthday arrived, and I surprised her with a party in the bar. She even received presents and started crying. An uncommon display of emotion from her. She surprised everyone by hugging them and said thank you. I treated her to a day at the spa, replete with hair and makeup and a gift ticket to an upmarket retail shop. "I'd like to see you get out of those jeans." "It's good." She reddened, and Helen told me it was time to take the initiative and transform her into an honest lady. "I'm not sure how she feels about me," I said. "You are the biggest fool in the state. She loves you, but she's not sure how to love. You need to teach her. It will be worth it." "How come you know so much?" Helen hugged Sam as he walked up, because 15 years ago, I was her. Then I met Sam. It took a while, but he demonstrated that there are nice men in the world. I just hadn't found one before I met him. I'd been in a biker gang for 3 years. They did terrible things to me, and I allowed it because I believed it was what I deserved. They messed me up so badly that I was unable to have children. He loved me anyway. How could I fight that? We have a bigger age difference than you and Amanda. We made it. Take things to the next level. Suit. You will never regret it. She's not like your ex. I had told them a little about Becky and me 6 months ago when we invited them around for dinner and Amanda had gone to the shop. She was doing well in school at my encouragement. Instead of taking the GED, she decided to pursue a full high school diploma. We calculated that it would take her another 2 months to graduate. They performed full graduation ceremonies twice a year to recognize their accomplishments. Some grads were in their 60s, but the majority were like Amanda, children who became lost in the system. I promised her a celebration when it happened. I nearly had a heart attack when she utilized my birthday gift. She wore a lovely sundress, white earrings, and a necklace. I had never seen her wear jewelry before. She wore 3-inch platforms and her hair was well done. She looked stunning. It made my heart ache. "What are your thoughts?" she inquired while twirling around. "Have you gotten your money's worth?" I just said the first thing that came to mind. All they did was polish the diamond. "You've always been this gorgeous. The man who gets you will be the most fortunate on the globe." She stopped mid-twirl, her eyes welling up with tears, and ran to her room. Shit. What have I done now? The following week, she came home from school giggling. "What up?" I asked. I'm glad she was in a nice mood. I was asked out by this very cute guy. We've been talking intermittently for the past month. I felt as if someone had driven a stake through my heart. "Oh, that's all I said," turning away. "Is that all you have to say?" she inquired, upset. "What do you want me to say? You have been flirting for a month. Why should I stop you?" She entered her room, slamming the door. I exhaled. That has been happening frequently lately. I was going to have to rehang it if she kept doing this. When I knocked, she refused to answer. Giving up? I grabbed a beer and wallowed in despair. By the third beer, I was pondering the secrets of women before falling asleep. I awoke as she gently shook my shoulder. "What?" I said, trying to concentrate. "We need to talk," she said. I was suddenly aware. Nothing positive has ever happened after such words in my experience. "Do you like me?" she asked. I was unable to read her eyes. "Yes, I do," I responded honestly. "How much?" "I'm not sure what you want here, Amanda. Bring a dense guy in?" She slapped me hard, and while I rubbed my jaw, she began to yell. "I think what I'm asking is if you love me not just as a friend, but truly love me. Since I've loved you for a long time and you've never realized. I know I'm much younger than you. I am uneducated. I have no social graces. I'm loud, jealous, and terrified, and that's only the beginning. I cannot take it any longer. It aches. So if you don't love me, I'm moving out." I ended her rant with a kiss. I said, "Hush now. Are you attempting to convince me that I do not have feelings for you? Because if you are, it's too late. Everything you say you don't have doesn't matter. You have something far more important. You hold my heart." I believe she fainted when she heard what I said. When she recovered, she lay in my lap, kissing and crying till she fell asleep. Did we jump into bed and have passionate love? No, she was still hurt and vulnerable, so I held her until she cried out. Then I carried her to my bed, put her in, and went out on the deck, gazing at the sky and wondering what would happen next. I had been out there for more than an hour when I returned. She picked out a shirt, put it on, and slid into bed. When I lay down, she nestled into my arms, whispered something like, "Love you," and fell asleep again. I held her for a long time, enjoying her presence until ultimately falling asleep. I awoke alone to the aroma of food. She flitted around the kitchen, making sure everything was perfect. I astonished her by sweeping her off her feet and kissing the back of her delicate neck. She stiffened initially, then relaxed and giggled. "Let me go, honey, or your breakfast will be burnt waffles." After breakfast, before she cleared the table, we spoke. It was Saturday and we had nowhere to go. She snuggled into my lap. "Honey, you are aware of my feelings for you. Take it leisurely with me. I'm hauling a lot of baggage." She informed me about her life via tears and hugs. She had been happy until the age of 10, when her father died. Her mother was never a strong person, falling into sadness and making poor decisions, eventually succumbing to alcoholism. She had a stepfather and other living boyfriends. When she was 15, someone attempted to assault her. She fought him off and informed the school. They removed her from her mother, and she spent the next 3 years in foster care and juvenile hall. She stole an automobile. She is desperate to see her tiny sister, 9 years younger. It was the first time I learned she had a sibling. When she reached 18, the system let her go. She ended up with a man out of desperation. She gave him her virginity, but their sexual encounters were borderline assaultive. Then he attempted to get her to hook for money. She ran away and wound up here. My heart aches for her. "I want you so much," she said, "but I freeze up. Help me." So I did. I even found her a therapist. 4 months later, it occurred. We had been getting closer, touching and talking. She became comfortable enough to stroll around in small underwear and a tank top, wearing slinky little dresses to bed, which she had not left since the first time I put her there. Amanda disliked drinking, but had acquired a taste for wine. After half a bottle one night, the floodgates were unlocked. I still took it slowly. The first time we made love, it was slow and gentle. The next morning, she woke me up. "Pick," I said, standing in front of the engagement rings. "Really?" Tears were already streaming as she spoke. "Really?" I said, dropping on one knee. "Now you see why I donned the suit. Marry me." After she sobbed, she said yes and calmed down. She tried on every ring in the store within my budget. She ultimately decided on a simple stone-end ring. Not the most expensive, but the one she preferred. When we walked into the bar, an instant party began. The women quickly huddled while the males stood. "What do they do?" I asked. The men laughed. "Planning a wedding, you moron! The best advice we can give you is to acquiesce to anything she wants. If you can afford it, get as far away from them as possible. She wanted a church wedding. We found one nearby. However, part of the contract required us to attend services for at least 6 weeks prior to the wedding. It turned out to be a positive thing. The Reverend was a smart old man who insisted on several therapy sessions. First, the disaster that was my first marriage emerged, along with everything that occurred to her. She grieved for me, looked me in the eyes, and promised she would never do that to me. I believed her. We ended up becoming members, not necessarily every week, but quite frequently. I accused her of exploiting it as a pretext to purchase other clothes. She rarely wore anything else except when she worked. She wanted to keep her job so she could have her own money. "The first time you say I don't look good in dresses, I'll stop wearing them," she added, smirking. She now has so many. She rotates, storing the off-season items in the other bedroom. I can still close my eyes and imagine Amanda coming down the aisle. The white lace and silk dress fitted her like a second skin, emphasizing her silhouette. Her thick length of hair tumbled down and her back shone in the sun. Helen was the bride's mother. Sam gave her away. That boy was my best man. Except for Gail, everyone from my job was present, as was nearly everyone from the bar. They escorted our limo to the airport on bicycles. Mom was there. She felt deeply for Amanda. She'd always wanted a daughter. Amanda warmed up more slowly, but when we left, she leaned in and said something that drove us to tears again. I asked about it on my way to the airport. "I thanked you, Mom, for sharing your kid. I will repay the favor with your grandchildren." It seems to make her pleased. Then she diverted me by revealing traces of her bridal gown underneath. We honeymooned in Belize because I had previously visited Cancun for my first honeymoon and wanted to make new memories. Amanda's first journey outside of the nation, or anywhere really. We had a great time. We did enjoy the beaches, however. She spent a lot of time under the umbrella. Because of her pale skin, I enjoyed seeing her red hair shine. She shocked me by taking us to a topless beach. Amanda removed her cover, revealing only a little bikini. "Shut your mouth, honey," she instructed. "I wanted to offer you something memorable. Walking around nearly naked while men slobber over me. I know no one will touch me except you. I will confess it." I had to jump into the water every few minutes to suppress my exhilaration. The water was warm, which did not help. Her petite, proportionate physique made her 32C breast appear larger. Her bum made men stop chatting as she passed by. I witnessed one wife jab her husband over it. That night, we were wild with passion. It was intense, but we made it through. 6 great months passed by. I forced her to quit her bartending job so she could spend more time with me at home. She complained, but did it. She had a hidden smirk, and I knew she was up to something. She returned to school to study hospitality and culinary management. I wholeheartedly backed her, but didn't understand her decision. One day she called me at work, seeming panicked. "Honey, I need you to come home right now. It's important." I exited instantly. She was pacing, visibly irritated. She ran into my arms and I had a horrible feeling. "Do you adore me?" she asked. "Do I even need to respond to that?" I responded. She relaxed and took my hand. "I have something to say and something to ask. Hear me out before you say anything." She had been searching for her sister, whom she hadn't seen since she was 4. "I found my sister. She does not remember me. She looks a lot like her father." "That's great." "Honey, she will warm up after getting to know you. Is she living in a good home?" Amanda started crying. No, she was not adopted and was in a poor situation. They had to take her and the others from their house. "Where is she now?" I asked. "She's in the extra bedroom," Amanda responded. Amanda brought her out once I had collected my thoughts. She was only 12, but already taller than Amanda. Her hair was black and her nose was slightly larger, but they had the same features. I introduced myself. "It's nice to finally meet you, Celeste. Amanda mentions you frequently." "Where was she while I was in that dreadful place?" Celeste asked fiercely. Amanda stepped in. "I am here now. I came for you as quickly as I could. 4 years ago, I couldn't care for myself, let alone an 8-year-old. I needed to grow up first. I apologize if you are angry." Celeste was defiant. "Great. Now I have to live with the Cleavers. I know everything about boys. Why do you think the home was closed down? Men want one thing, and that is right here," she said, clutching her crotch. "Simply give me some cash and let me go. I am yours for the night." Amanda was stunned, and I was furious. "Maybe we'll just offer you a warm bed for tonight and send you on your way tomorrow. If you had something better, go for it. But if we decide to keep you, we expect you to be respectful and not cause any problems. My wife is my top priority. Are we clear?" Celeste pulled away, but soon regained her confidence. "I don't need a father, sibling, or mother. I do not need anything from you." I turned to Amanda and hugged her. She began crying. "I am sorry, honey. I understand how badly you wanted this. It is not your fault." I took a step back and gazed at them. "I am going to start the grill. Celeste, you two are talking. You're here for at least one night. Be civil and refrain from cussing." They talked as I was setting up the grill. I kept the curtain open in case I needed to enter. Amanda made Celeste weep, and they began cuddling. Perhaps there was hope. Dinner was quiet, but there was no fight. Celeste, 2 steaks, 2 baked potatoes. She even helped Amanda do the dishes. Then they walked into the living room and told me they were leaving for approximately an hour. They needed to acquire some clothes for Celeste while they were gone. I considered how society treats children like unwanted luggage. When they returned, Celeste was giggling. She even said goodnight to us after showing off her new footed pajamas. Later in bed, Amanda inquired, "Can we keep her for a while? I will be responsible for her. You will not even notice her." I chuckled. I doubt it. "All right, she can remain temporarily, but she must behave. Thank you, honey." Amanda said, "I knew I could count on you." The state was pleased to grant Amanda custody because she was in a stable marriage, lived in a good neighborhood, and had references. Furthermore, they would not have to pay anything. When I inquired about Celeste's Social Security money, nobody had filed for it. I hired a lawyer and he handled the paperwork. The state had to pay us whatever she was owed for the previous 8 years. She also received $700 per month until she was 18. We put it in a college fund for her. Celeste was not as thankful as we expected. She grumbled that she should have gotten the money sooner to buy a car. That is nearly 4 years away. Let's see what happens. I claimed to have become the evil guy, but this made things easier for Amanda. Celeste despised it, but she knew better than to pit us against each other. The first time she attempted, she was grounded for a month. She had fallen behind in school, owing primarily to a lack of concentration. She initially declined my assistance, but Amanda offered her incentives for good marks. So she began listening. During this time, I was performing well at work. The winemakers campaign was successful, which led to bigger things. My supervisor feared I would go, so he made a bargain. I could invest in the company, and he would match every dime. I purchased up to 7%. Amanda and I agreed to do it. Celeste ran away twice. The first time she was missing for 4 days before being discovered at a bus stop. A stayed away. Amanda cried the entire time. Celeste reappeared, indignant and enraged. I waited until we were alone before talking. "You'd be a good kid if you let yourself. You're intelligent. You can imagine what it would be like to live on the streets. A difficult existence that ended before the age of 30. Is this what you want? You run again and you will not return. In 3 years, you will be 16. I will pay your court charges for emancipation, give you your Social Security money, and wish you a good life. However, my wife has shed tears over you throughout the past year. Do you understand? I believe I scared her." 6 months later, she did not return home from school. When she eventually arrived, the doors were locked. Thank God Amanda wasn't present. I spoke to her through the screen door. "I've already boxed your belongings. You can come in and wait for the DCFs. They'll be here in around 45 minutes. She stepped in and crouched on the couch, swaying back and forth. She soon started crying and begging. "Please do not send me away. I'll be fine, I promise. I did not mean to depart. I terrified when I was caught smoking at school. They suspended me for 3 days. It will kill Amanda." I wasn't sure what to do. I was startled. "You don't like smoking? Were you a smoker?" "No, but I was with them when they cut class. Please do not send me away." "Look at me, Celeste," I said. She lifted her head. "You need to learn. You've got a support system. Amanda loves you. I love you. We are a family. We are here to provide instruction and love. Allow us to do our job. You should have came to us and explained what you did. We would have punished you. We were disappointed, but we would never have stopped loving you." She cried louder and flew into my arms, weeping. Amanda walked in and said anxiously, "What's going on?" "Our youngster is growing up, honey. She did something wrong, was caught, and came home to tell me about it. I believe she recognizes what she'd done and apologizes. I will let her tell you." I dropped her off and proceeded outside, spotting the DCS worker at the mailbox. Hello, Denise. Sorry, that was a false alarm. She was suspended for 3 days for cutting class. She was terrified to confront us. Amanda is with her right now. Denise sighed. I should check, but I believe I can trust you. Now I can go home, cook Fred's dinner, and dine as a family for once. Thank you, Denise. I apologized, feeling awful for taking her time. Why don't you come over on Sunday? I'm considering roasting a pair of Boston butts. That sounds wonderful, Jessica, but it's homecoming at our church. Why not come there instead? We're holding a competition to see who can bring the most guests. You might put me ahead. I told her I'd show it to the girls and walked inside. Amanda asked, Who was that? It was Denise, honey. She invited us to homecoming. Would you like to go? I would not mind. They've got a new young reverend. I will call her and ask what she wants me to bring. Celeste grinned as she watched me. I attempted to appear stern, but failed. She jumped from the couch. I know I am grounded for a month, but I can still go to church, right? Bobby Smith attends that church, does he, Celeste? You're 13. You have time for that. Later. Much later. Between you two, lightning will strike the church. They both smiled at me before Celeste left to help her sister with dinner. That was the exact moment I realized our small family would be fine. This had been a busy week for us. Celeste made the honor roll for the first time and planned to start learning to drive during the summer. The thought of someone so young driving terrified me. Amanda graduated tonight, cradling her diploma like a life preserver in a wild sea. She even delivered a speech that moved everyone to tears. She talked about her childhood, her sisters, and how far she had gone because someone believed in her and would not let her give up. She congratulated me for being the best husband and Celeste for being the ideal daughter. Have faith, have hope, believe in yourself. You may not be as fortunate as I was, but you will be better for trying. We hosted a cookout for her the next day, and our small house was filled. Mom came down to celebrate, as did my work friends, including my supervisor Denise from DCF's and, shockingly, Jack Edwards and his wife. I assumed they were still in Italy after everyone had left. They stayed to take Celeste for the weekend. They married late and had no children. June adored Amanda, treating her like the daughter she had never had. When Celeste arrived, she was overjoyed. She kept her for a weekend once a month so Amanda and I could have our own time. She always returned Celeste with at least one new outfit. Mom got involved too. Celeste was rarely home over the summer. I grumbled about it once and was shortly overtaken by the pack. Your girls had a difficult life, Chase. You are the best thing that has ever happened to them. I've always desired a daughter and grandchildren. Thank you for these. So stop fussing since your daughter is maturing and bonding with her grandparents. We are meant to spoil her. How about giving us a few extra grandchildren to make sharing easier? Mom sat back after the speech. Smirking, we heard a sob and recognized Celeste. Soon the women flocked around her, saying comforting words. When they had calmed down, I began to inquire about what had occurred, but Amanda cut me off. June stepped straight in. Amanda, listen to your mother chase you as well. We are not getting any younger. Give them to us shortly so we can chase them around. I looked at Jack and he simply grinned. I think it's a great idea. Celeste hugged me tightly before leaving, clinging to me. We didn't go to the pub as much as we used to. Children, please limit your options. I still went after work occasionally. Celeste generally had something going on that required a ride, so Amanda became the Uber mom, driving her to band practice, soccer games, and so on. I wasn't accessible for the majority of it, but I attended all of her games. One bright Saturday after a soccer game, I sat and listened to her and her teammates talk about where to go to celebrate their victory. She was now going out in groups, which made me a little uncomfortable because they liked to couple up. Amanda laughed. Even if you wanted to stop it, you can't keep her from growing up. This is wonderful practice for dating. Trust her, she'd die before disappointing her father. Amanda had just graduated and we were at a church party. The kids wanted to get ice cream, so I walked up. This is your daddy now. Ask him whether everything is all right. She stared at me and batted her eyes. Daddy, can I join Mrs. Jenkins and my buddies for ice cream? It captured my heart and tears began to flow. Sure, baby, here's a 20. She giggled, took the money, and ran away yelling, Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad. I'll be home by 7. Amanda had to drive us home afterwards. It's simply easier than explaining each time someone says something. Plus, you still treat me like a child. I like it, she said, grinning. I enjoyed it too. Our friend Sam suffered a stroke. Not a nasty one, but serious enough that he needed to reduce his workload. All of their pals pitched in, but Helen was clearly unable to keep up. Amanda approached me one Sunday after church. We were going to ride. Celeste was out with pals. Before we leave, I need to ask you a question. Let me finish what I'm saying before you say anything else. It is significant to me. I enjoy being Celeste's mother. I enjoy being your wife. But Helen requires assistance, and I want to use my degree. I discussed it with Helen and Sam, and they are both in favor of it. I want to return to work at the bar, not as an employee, but as a partner. Helen will manage the bar with Sam's assistance. I'll manage the kitchen. Will you think about it? I did this while we were riding. We arrived at the pub, and I saw it through new eyes. It was in decent condition, but may use a little polishing. Helen stopped by, and Amanda excused herself by walking into the kitchen. What are your thoughts? I believe there is a lot to ponder. I do not want to lose my wife to a business. You're familiar with my past. We also have to consider Celeste, and I will need to know how much money we are talking about at the end. I'm probably going to say yes. She understands that I cannot refuse her. Helen patted my hand. You will not lose her, honey. She's already planned it. To where? I asked. She will spend very little time away from you. She has enormous intentions for after the startup is completed and everyone has been trained. She's even made me and Sam eager. So we talked it over. I'd long ago let her handle our finances. She was excellent at stretching dollars. I had a broad idea, but she normally handled the expenses. Our autos were all paid for, even the 3-year-old minivan she drove Celeste and her pals about in. We purchased our home after the lease expired. It was little, yet it met our needs. We had a large down payment, so our mortgage was cheap. By now, I owned 4% of my company and was earning an excellent living for our size. Our savings account was healthy, so I had no doubts about where the money was coming from. Finally, we owned 30% of the bar. We spent a little money cleaning it up, upgraded the kitchen, and celebrated the great reopening. The business picked up almost immediately. The previous customers adored the new look, and the new customers enjoyed the environment. The place opened at 11 a.m. and is now serving lunch. Amanda did miracles in the kitchen. There were no more simple burgers and fries. She added new toppings, such as avocado, hot peppers, spinach, and various cheese pieces. The hot dogs had grilled onions, mushrooms, hot mustard, and dill relish. Instead of conventional fries, she served home fries that were chopped nearly like chips and marinated overnight in a variety of flavors. She also included homemade soups, such as potato with cheese and bacon pieces, tomatoes with half and half, as well as a herb-infused pork stew. One of her modifications was a large gas grill, which allowed you to grill vegetables when they were in season. She shopped from local farmers whenever possible and kept a chalkboard at the kitchen door that listed whose farm donated the day's veggies or meats. The farmers adored it. The regulars were cautious at first, but soon they were debating and even disputing about whose farm had the best fruit. It was funny to witness two large bikes almost collide, whether pumpkin or butternut squash soup was preferable. She also introduced a wine list with local wines, including Jack's Winery. They had to leave since it was illegal in our state to offer wine in a bar with pool tables. Helen and Sam didn't mind because that's where most confrontations originated, so they added 8 extra tables to the room. Helen negotiated an agreement with a local brewer to offer their beers on draft. A local culinary reviewer heard wonderful things and paid us a visit. We didn't realize that till the review came out. The caption said, "The best hidden jewel in the state," followed by an excellent evaluation. Sam's Bar and Grill, located on Swan Pond Road just outside of the city boundaries, has been open for 75 years. A local favorite. Amanda Gooding, the minority owner, has just upgraded the kitchen, thrusting it into the spotlight. The regulars would have preferred that it remain local, but news has spread and there is no turning back. Blue-collar and white-collar bikers, farmers, and college students can all be found rubbing elbows in a friendly environment. The only time I heard loud voices was when 2 customers debated on whether rosemary or basil should be the dominant herb in pork stew. I sided with the biker since he was larger, and I've always enjoyed rosemary. The pub serves simple meal that is well seasoned and prepared at an affordable price. The service is wonderful, the environment is relaxing, and it nearly glows. The sanitation rating is 102, 1 point short of excellent. I commended Mrs. Gooding, and she swore they'd receive the highest grade in 6 months, even if she had to work her entire staff to death. Because they are located outside of the city, they only serve beer and wine. Helen Connors, the manager and major owner, said they have no intention of obtaining a liquor license, even if the limitations are increased. It's just so much easier without liquor, she explained. The pub resembles an old-time saloon, serving local brews and wines as well as big brands. The staff can easily explain the differences between a Pilsner, Lager, or Bock, as well as a dry white and a sweet red. It's a little out of the way, but well worth the journey. I've come 3 times and ordered 3 different dinners, and each time I was pleased with the quality, quantity, and service. One more thing. I demand that you try the banana pudding. It is a weakness of mine, but it is the best I've ever had. And I've tried a lot throughout the years. Helen and Amanda simply exchanged smiles. I had no idea who he was, Amanda said. I just felt he was an inquisitive customer with limited expertise. Celeste and I ate dinner there most nights. Amanda worked and always made time to join us for dinner. Celeste wanted to start working there when she was old enough to get a work permit, and I was fine with that. There were several families there now. The majority of serious drinking occurred in the bar. Thursday night was bike night, and the local Harley Owners Organization was out in force, as were individuals riding all kinds of motorcycles. They requested to hold their meetings there, but we did not have a separate space. Amanda, Sam, and Helen discussed it, hired an architect, and nearly increased the size of the place. Even that space quickly filled up. I had 80% ownership by now. Celeste, our agency, turned 16. She went to work part-time after school, learning how to cook with her sister or mother. After graduating from high school, she planned to join a local culinary school. She wanted a fast car, but I wasn't about to give a 16-year-old something so powerful. We bought her a Mustang instead. Not one of those turbo monsters, but a pleasant V6. It still went pretty quickly. Amanda was nearly 26, and I was ready to start our family. She agreed, but she wanted to wait until Celeste graduated before focusing on the baby. Celeste giggled as she joined in on our talk. "Mom, do I look like a baby? I can care for myself. You should think about Dad. Give me a younger sister or brother while he is still young enough to assist care for them." I believed her reasoning was valid, but Amanda laughed and said we'd speak about it later. Our business was also expanding. My advertising strategy for Jack generated increased business, particularly from the local alcohol industry. We currently handle 2 more wineries and 3 breweries, and we are in talks with a local distillery that is gaining national notice. I was attending a regional convention when I ran into an old friend. I hadn't seen Ida for almost 6 years. She still looks gorgeous. I noticed her first and sneaked up behind her. I mocked. "You still have a thing for color lines. I'm tired of waiting for you, but there are a lot of white boys here nearly salivating over you." I hugged her from behind as we were conversing. She was surprised at first, but returned the hug once she learned who it was. "Jess, it's nice to see you. How are you? Where have you been? You just vanished. I have missed you." There were occasions when I needed good advice, and a pal. We took a table and talked for an hour. She was divorced. Her husband cheated on her, and she caught him. He was less rigorous about color lines than I was. She caught him with a tiny blonde. They went to counseling, but she became pregnant, and he left. I took her hand. "Sorry, Ida, I understand how that feels. Is there anyone in your life right now?" "No, I suppose it's too early. I've been considering a shift. My agency was sold, and I do not like the new owners. They keep me because I am good at what I do. I need a change." I smiled and handed her my card. "Ever consider relocating to the sunny South? Think about it and call me." To my astonishment, she accepted the card. Just before we departed, she inquired about my life. I showed her my wedding band. Every day, I thank God for my life. I have a wonderful wife, a wonderful daughter, a fantastic job, and many good friends. I showed her photos of Amanda and Celeste. She glanced at them in amazement. "How did you end up with such a gorgeous woman? And your daughter looks exactly like her. Except for the hair color, she seems very young." Did she have a daughter when she was 6? I laughed and elaborated. She hugged me, truly pleased for me. Later, I noticed that neither of us mentioned Becky, not once. 2 months later, my supervisor summoned me to his office and tossed me a resume. Take a look at the reference she supplied you. Is she any good? I looked at it and smiled. I might have taught her, but she's a natural. She is better than I am now. If we can afford her, it would be foolish not to hire her. He grunted. Hire her. Then ask her to report to you. Now I have something substantial to discuss. I have not told anyone yet. I am unwell. Jess. It's quite serious. I have a brain tumor. It must be removed or it will kill me. There is a 50/50th possibility I won't make it. I was stunned. I spoke with Gloria and she agreed. You should run the place till I get better. If I make it. If I don't, you must take control and keep the place running until Gloria decides what to do. His announcement shocked our group of pals. He and Jack were close for many years. On the day of surgery, our entire office was there. Many of Gail's pals were also present. He summoned every one of us to his room to say farewell, just in case. Ken, June, Amanda, Celeste, and I took turns holding Gloria when we weren't holding her. We were at the chapel praying for him for 5 hours. When the doctor appeared, everyone held their breath. He's doing well. So far, I am optimistic about his chances of recovery. It will be tomorrow before he is strong enough to receive guests. We yelled, sobbed, and thanked the doctors and God. Ida fit right in as my right-hand lady. Amanda and Celeste adored her, and she soon became a member of our group of friends. Pretty soon, the matchmaking began. Married ladies have a thing for unmarried women in their lives. She refused, claiming she wasn't ready yet. She spent a lot of time in the bar, and everyone quickly realized she was our buddy, so she became their friend as well. One day, a friend invited her to a poker run. He was enormous, bearded, and white, and he was probably the gentlest man I'd ever encountered in a social setting with children. They gathered around him as if he were the Pied Piper. His wife turned out to be a cold, deceitful lady who had several indiscretions before he found out. It destroyed him, yet he found comfort in our community. Her new boyfriend believed he could disrespect him. A big mistake. Sam and I bailed him out. I hired a lawyer and made it go away, but the harm had been done. After 18 months, he still wasn't ready to date. Ida stunned everyone by agreeing to a date with him to get to know each other. They were both smiling like mad on the poker run, indicating that it was a terrific date. 8 months later, she got a stunning ring and was 3 months pregnant. My life changed when a woman named Alice Johnson approached me about a campaign. She had it all planned out, which made me hesitant. Clients rarely have good ideas and frequently insist on doing things their way. When something fails, they don't know why. She worked as a personal manager who specialized in fighting. Her new sister-in-law was Bettina Bang Bang Stewart, a middleweight MMA fighter and world champion. The campaign was not for her, but rather for a charity that both of them supported. I was hesitant but agreed to the meeting. Ida and I met Alice at the airport, ate lunch, and she outlined her concept. It was quite clever. We changed it a little, conducted focus groups, and decided to stick with it. Soon, advertisements emerged in print and on billboards. It was a twist on the Got Milk campaign. Instead of milk, it was Got Love, the National Adoption Coalition's official tagline. The advertisements showed celebrities who had been adopted as youngsters, as well as a group of children from various homes, generally in their hometown. There was a request to consider adoption. Local dairies agreed to donate liters of milk to the houses for each successful adoption. We even added the milk mustache. Soon, celebrities were clamoring to be a part of the ad. Rock and country artists, athletes, business executives, actresses, Olympians, and Nobel Prize winners have all adopted and are willing to help. We showed several of them alongside their adoptive parents. Some had adopted their own children. Betty and Mark Stewart, who helped develop the concept, posed with their recently adopted son. It was an instant hit. The campaign earned my company, High Country Advertising, a national prize. Howard, my boss, was too weak to travel, so he sent Ida and me to accept it. Her new husband, Roy, and Amanda also came along. It was incredibly rewarding to be there. We delivered our acceptance speech and apologized to Alice Johnson, whom we insisted on seeing and sharing the platform with us for stealing her concept. We thanked her and the audience for honoring us. Following the awards ceremony, a mixer was held. Ida and I had a bet going. The person who received the most offers had to buy the loser dinner. I received 9 offers. She got 16. I told her that I wanted steak and eggs. We were going to depart when I bumped into her. Becky. She seems cautious and afraid. "Hello, Jessica, how are you?" I examined her over. She was still gorgeous, a little heavier but not much. Her hair was shorter and her lips bigger, but she remained the beauty I had fell in love with. "I'm good. Becky, how are you?" She waved her hand dismissively. "I am all right. Congratulations on your award. It was nice to see Ida again. She says she now works for you." I prefer to say she collaborates with me. I am a minority owner and the current manager of High Country Advertising. I have been there since, well, after us. I like it. I enjoy the place and the people. She gazed at my finger. "It appears like you have a strong attraction to someone." I grinned as I stroked my ring. "Yes, there is. I see you've also discovered someone." She had a large rock on her finger. She twirled it anxiously. "I have, and I am content. But only late at night while you're resting close to her. Do you ever think of me? If you had simply forgiven me, we would still be together." I exhaled. "I used to think about you a lot. But then I met Amanda, and you were a distant memory. I have not forgotten you. Sometimes something will bring up memories of happier times, but it is transitory." She suddenly grabbed my hand. "We could start over. I would leave him in a minute. If you take me back, I never got over you. We were intended to be together." I heard a loud intake of air behind me as I carefully removed her hand. "No, Becky, we weren't. If we were, you would not have cheated, and I would not have found Amanda. There is more love and faithfulness in the tip of her little finger than in the entire body. I apologize, Becky. Please attempt to live a nice life." I began to move away when I felt a little hand slide into mine. "Who is your pal, honey?" Amanda inquired, smiling. "This is Becky. Someone I knew in my old town. Becky, this is Amanda, my wife." They didn't shake hands, instead staring at each other. I stared at them together. Becky, in her mid-30s, wore a basic black outfit. Amanda, aged 26, remained youthful in a green floor-length gown that matched her eyes. Her coppery red hair cascaded down her back. I was shocked at how fortunate I was. Amanda broke the stare and turned to me, smiling. "Honey, I know it's early, but could you just take me back to the room? I appear to be experiencing an evening attack of morning sickness." She paused, placed her palm over her lips, and giggled. "Oops, I was planning to surprise you tonight. Too late now. Congratulations, honey. It's a boy." I heard a gasp behind me, but what mattered most was there in front of me. I drew her into my arms, loving and crying while she giggled. She eventually had to tap on my back to get me to release go. There was a large party at the pub. Amanda smiled and thanked everybody. "I just wanted to make sure I had your full attention," she explained. "I know who you were speaking with in New York. If I see you in the same room as that woman again, I will make you regret it. Do you understand?" She was squeezing me now. I made a firm pledge that it would never, ever happen again. She let go and whispered into my ear. "Thank you, honey, and I overheard what you told her. It was quite sweet. Besides, you'll need those promises. I still want that girl. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired.